Is it okay now? So the first check is usually the voice check, and we ask people to let us know, comment, all good. So how many of you are like part of the Fondbites courses earlier, and those who are new who's like watching the Fondbites session for the like very first time, you can just say hi, and then if you are a first time at a Fondbites, I see most of the names are quite familiar to me, right? So today's live, hi Pavna, you are new to Fondbites. So today's live is all going to be about beginner's guide, okay? Because I've been getting like a lot of phone calls and also requests on WhatsApp, and people have been trying to reach out to us asking, um, how do we really start? Like, I don't even know anything about baking, no. So then, but also I have some of my students who've been just joining up all the courses that I keep coming up with, and I have like the brownie class and the cupcake class, and then people like I'm a complete beginner, and then probably the upcoming session is like an ice cream class, and then probably like a tea cake class which just got over. And so I'm guiding them towards any of the upcoming class, and then I ask people to go and enroll in any of the past courses as well. I'm going to open up the enrollments for the past courses also. um, Sanjana Jayachandran, your mom recommended Shanti. Okay, yeah, I know Shanti very well, and glad you also wanted to be part of this live session today. So what I thought, what could I do to the beginners? Because I felt like I'm not really giving them a guidance of how they really should start up and what it really takes to start a home baking business. So you can see how the setup looks with the oven and the beater, and I have all the other set of ingredients. So today's session is going to go in like 4 sections. So the first one, I'm going to talk about all the materials, the equipments, the tools, and stuff like that that we need to have at home. You can slowly start procuring them, and see certain things. I'll just as I show the props, the properties, or the tools, I'll explain whether you really need it, whether it is mandatory, or you could just go and take your time to buy them. So you can also slowly invest. Because when I started, for those who are completely new, I started baking in the year 2011, almost 14 years back, right? And I started because I was just trying to kill my time and try to find something that I can do for myself. I started to bake for my son's birthday, and he was like 2 years old at that time. And when I did that, I never had like most of it. Okay, so I really started with whatever bowls I had at home, and I never even had the spatulas or the whisks or any of those tools that now I feel is like very, very essential. But that's how I started. I don't know if you guys know mattu, it is in Tamil. And it is like a wooden spoon, or it is like a wooden thing that you can use to mash your probably a dal or your greens or something like that. I use that to start with beating the butter and sugar, and I never had oven. Like I said, no beater also, right? So I used my cooker or like a big vessel where I put the sand. Usually it is like salt also works, like a no oven baking is all something that I've been doing initially. Initially, which means it took about like say what 6 months, 7 months. Until then, I simply used the sand, the beach sand on the cooker, and then I started baking. I think one pan probably I got a cake pan, and then I used to use my hand to make the batter, and then I started baking. I kept on baking on the stove top for like what 5 6 months, and because I was doing that extensively, and then I thought I'll probably go and invest in an oven, and that oven at that time costed me around 3,500. I do have that here. I don't use it anymore, but I also do have an OTG because I wanted to show how you also probably will need an OTG to start with. So I started with that oven, and then a hand beater, which eventually costed about like 3,200, a hand beater, right? That I went ahead and I invested after 8 months of me having started baking, and then I was doing it consistently. So because I know I was going to do that, and that is when I realized I need to invest slowly. I didn't go ahead and then say I put off like 50,000 and then I started setting up my home baking. I needed like a very posh room or a separate room, nothing. It was on the kitchen top, it was on the dining table of my home, and that is where I started. And that is predominantly the same thing that I keep advising a lot of people. Unless you really have an interest that you think is going to let you keep doing this over and over again, if you have like some kind of like a fire and a passion to do baking, don't jump into investing a whole lot of things. What I have is like bare minimum. There are other expensive gadgets right now I use. It is like what, 13 years plus. So the oven that I have right now costs around 3 lakh. The fridge and freezer I have right now costs another 2 lakh. So eventually after years is when I slowly invested one stuff after the other, right? So, but complete beginners are simply okay to start with even without an oven. You can also bake it on your stove top, probably because this particular series of beginners baking guide is going to be free, and it is going to be month on month. And every month, obviously, I'll come and then I will brief on the basics, and then I'm going to do a demonstration of one particular recipe. Probably in the following months, I could do one on the stove top, no oven baking as well, because it has worked for me, it works for a lot of people, and that is also somewhere you can probably start thinking you can start with. Okay, so this first section is going to be briefing up on the tools, which I feel is essential. Like I said, go slow, don't start investing everything on one go, right? So the second section of today's live is going to be about the ingredients. Now that the tools are all going to be over, after I show all of them, I'll show the ingredients. So what is really necessary, because the time when I started baking, I never knew all-purpose flour, maida, is going to be a staple in my home, because I never used to make anything with maida. We'll have like all the dals and then probably whole wheat flour for making your chapati or puri, right? And maida was never part of my pantry, the home kitchen pantry. When I started to bake, and only then I started to procure or buy maida. And I never had baking powder, never had baking soda, or even cocoa powder, corn flour, nothing. I never probably used even corn flour for making like a chicken 65, because it's a simple home where we used to cook like for 3 times a day for us to just feed ourselves. That is a simple household that I used to be living my life. And when I started baking, slowly I started buying because I wanted to try this recipe. And then probably I went ahead to procure what I needed. Butter also was not a part of my staple in my home pantry. Butter itself is something that I really, because ghee is there. You put ghee on probably your rotis or your dosas, you know. So ghee is for also making Indian sweets. So it's a typical South Indian home. So butter itself came into my household after I had to start baking. So then I simply wanted to show all that is very, very essential to start at making a simple recipe at home. So the second section is briefing on all the ingredients that you might have to know, or you might have to also procure. So then the third section is again very important. Now that I've shown the tools, materials and equipments, and then briefed up on all the ingredients, third section I wanted to keep up how you should actually measure the ingredients, because I show the maida, I show the butter, there's sugar, corn flour and things like that. So what is the ideal way to measure? So most of the times when I share recipes through my paid courses, students come back asking me, I don't want it in cups. I really want it in grams. I will bake only if the recipe comes in grams. And that has just become something that it has just gone viral everywhere. People really needed a measuring scale, and then they have to weigh out the ingredients. Now, so I am going to teach what is the right way. So you don't ditch a recipe just because it is going to ask for cups and spoons. Now, because now if you don't know how to measure, even like probably a baking soda or a baking powder, it says like half a teaspoon or 1 teaspoon. You have to know to measure that. Now, if you know to measure a baking powder or a baking soda, which is an integral part of any baked recipe, now if you know that, then obviously you have to know how to measure 1 cup of anything. Now, 1 cup of maida, does it equate to 1 cup of sugar in weight? Does it equate to 1 cup of milk? There is like a lot of misconception around. People do a lot of mistakes in the measurements, and because of which the recipes go for a toss, the final baked product go for a toss. And so they always feel measuring in cups just gives you a wrong product, a wrong end product. So they always wanted the grams. When it is okay to ask to a teacher that you want it in grams, but then to equip yourself to learn to measure things accurately using cups is very, very important. Now that probably you have the cups, obviously you want to know what is the ml, the quantity of the cup. It's just measuring cups, not any cup in your kitchen pantry, right? So I'm going to teach how and what is the right way of measurement and what are the wrong methods that people do, because of which the measurements go for a toss and the end product also goes for a toss. So that is the third section. So now finally on the fourth section, I'm going to actually demonstrate one amazing eggless vanilla pound cake. Now, if you are a beginner and if you felt that this session probably was motivating you to go and actually try out a recipe to bake a cake, a very simple one. So you go ahead and then do that today. And if you do, then, Fondbites Instagram is like the active page that I just keep sharing some of my personal, and then the official classes and a lot more things that I try out goes on into the Fondbites Instagram page. If you're new, then you could go and follow that. And if you're watching this YouTube live, and if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel of Fondbites School of Sugar Art, go ahead and do that now, because we're going to have quite a few free sessions that I'm going to come up with that I felt like I had to do to our community, which is the baking community. And being here in this industry for 13 years, and then I'm doing my short life classes and ice cream classes coming up, and then I'm going to plan all the future classes that just keeps adding to your repertoire of a lot of sessions that you keep attending. So the beginners are just stuck. And when they ask me, I don't know how to guide them. And so this free live session, which is going to be a beginner's baking guide, is going to be a monthly thing. And I feel like really very happy that I had to start something like this and then come to you guys and then start teaching you from the basics. Okay. So we start with, probably we do the side. We'll just keep showing. First stuff is oven. Like I said, you can also do a stove top. Probably in one of the future lives, I'll just come over to show recipe that you can do with a stove top. So I'm not even just promoting the brand, but there are quite a different brands. Sunflame is there, Philips is there, Bajaj, Chroma, Morphy Richards. There are quite a few brands. And so OTG, this is called an OTG. Okay. So now you have two rods on the top and then on the bottom as well. So the heat comes from the rod. So when you switch the oven on, this rod becomes hot. Okay, it becomes like red in color, and then on the bottom also. So you have two on the bottom and two on the top, right? And now we have a few knobs here. Okay, what are those knobs? Let me just turn. So the first one calls for temperature, right? And so it starts at 0. And then most of the recipes try and ask for a 180. And if this says 100 is here, 150, and then 250 is there, right? So if there is a 200 is here, there is a 150, and then if there is a 200 here, right? So your recipe, if it calls for like 180 degrees, then you have to eyeball between your 150 and then 200. And so if I keep it exactly in between, that will be like 175, 150 to 200. Now, if I have to do it at 180, if your recipe calls for 180, you'll have to keep it a little away from 150 and then a little closer to 200. So this will be the ideal temperature when the recipe calls for it. Now, you can't be keeping it anywhere and then expect the oven to bake. You have to set the knob, turn the knob, and then keep it at, say if it is 160, certain recipes will call for 160. So it has to be a little away from 150 here, and so this will be 160. A 170 could be this, 180 could be this, 90, and then if it is 200. Cake recipes and cookie recipes will not call for a 200, so you will have to be anywhere between 150 and 200 depending on what your recipe is going to call for. And then this one says a lot of different options, right? So it says warm, grill, bake, toast, and all that. So don't get confused with what are the other options that are given. You can keep it at bake and then check if the rods on the top and the bottom both are heating up, which means both have to go red in color. Okay. So now if that possibly happens at a grill mode, if the grill mode gets both the rod on the top and bottom red, then you will switch over to the grill mode. If the bake mode is going to let only the bottom rod on, that also still works. However, I usually suggest letting the top two rods on and the bottom two rods on. You want both of the rods to glow, to become red in color. So the heat from the top also touches your cake pan, and then the bottom also heats up. So you have heat all around your oven. So just check, because each oven is different. Okay, so try and see if both the rods are switched on in whichever mode your oven is going to let you do. And now we have the last knob will be about the timer, right? So now preheating is one thing all your recipes will call for. Usually it is like you can just turn on to whatever time that you want. Now it says like what, 40 minutes. I just kept it at 40. Now when I turn it at 40, it will start, the timer will start going back to reach 0. Now when you're preheating, just turn the knob and let it go on even for 1 hour. It doesn't matter, because you want the oven to be in the heat, in the particular temperature, in the setting where you have both the rods switched on, and in the timing, probably you are going to start the oven to run empty. When you're preheating, your oven will be empty. That is called as preheating. You have to heat the oven before you put your baked recipes, batter or cookie, anything inside that. So you will switch on the oven. You will set the timer. After setting the two knobs, you set the timer, which is like way beyond even 30 minutes. Let it keep running. So now this will go and reach the particular temperature which you have set this first knob to. And you have to be sure, you can also set this back, bring it down and switch it off, and then probably you heard that ding sound, right? So it's like turn it on, and if you don't want it to go that long, you can keep turning it back to where you started. That is how it stops, it comes back to 0. Now a preheat happens with all the time that you need to prepare your batter. Now you don't need to start the preheat 1 hour before. Probably you can time it based on how you're preparing for all the recipe preparations, and then come and start the preheating and put it at 30 minutes. Now it will keep on preheating, and probably it will just reach around say 15 minutes, and then your pan is ready, your cookie dough is ready, and then you're ready to put it inside the oven. And after you put the product inside the oven, ensure to keep the time what the recipe calls for. But you have to always keep monitoring what happens inside the oven, if the cake is baked or if the cookie is done. And once you feel like it is done, though the timer is set to probably 20 minutes and your cake got baked when it is like just about to reach 0, you still have the timer to go and reach 0, but you find the cake is baked. Just go, put the knob, get it done, open it and get the cake out, and you would have baked a perfect cake. But you need to keep a control of how long you are baking. But preheating has to continue and keep happening until you put the product inside. So for preheating, don't send. Usually when you are probably looking into some YouTube videos, it could probably say like in 10 minutes preheating is done, right? But if you set the timer to 10 minutes, it will go, keep turning back itself, and it will get done. After this sound has come, the ring has come, it will stop working. And when the oven stops after this noise, the sound, the heat will start going down. So you don't want that. So preheating, just turn the knob completely, let it keep on going. And if it just comes back to this before you are ready with putting your cake inside the oven, go back, turn it on. Because as long as you are not putting your product inside, the oven should always be running, and that is how you will know the oven is in the heat that you have set the knob to. So this is all about the OTG, right? And I read the last comment. With both rods on a grill mode, you bake in grill mode, or is it only for preheating? you have to bake in the same mode that you're preheating. I would suggest to start with having both the rods on in whichever mode that works. Okay, in warm or grill, because every oven is different. This one oven, I'm just the simple OTG where it says, it doesn't see, there are certain ovens which says, which has the knob that calls for both the rods, single rod, with fan, without fan, and all that. Now this particular oven does not have that. I would suggest to go probably without fan, because fan gives you a lot of heat, especially in OTG. I would suggest to go with two rods on to keep it simple. And if you don't have an option for two rods, but it says grill mode, and only in grill mode you find the rod getting heated up, then go ahead with the grill mode and not the bake mode. If bake mode in your oven gives you both the rods on and both the rods are heating up, then stick to that. Now, irrespective of what the word says in the knob, go ahead and use that when you find both the rods are heating up and becoming red in color, right? So that is about the oven. And every oven comes with a tray, a baking tray, which is going to look something like this. No, I don't know if this will fit inside. This is not there. இதுக்கான பியா ஃபிலியா இல்ல, இதுக்கான ட்ரே இல்ல பியா, அந்த என்னோட black tray இதுக்குள்ள போகுமா? So you will have a tray. Every oven comes with one tray. Let me see if this also does not go in. I think this is also a small one. Okay, so this one goes. Every oven comes with its own wire rack. Okay, so this one goes and fits inside. So usually a recipe will ask you to place it on the middle rack. So when you know that you're going to place the distance between the bottom rack and then the top rod and the bottom rod, now this one has to be placed in the middle. You can't be placing it because there are a few provisions to keep. This is like extremely low. Now when you put the rack here, the heat from the rod is like too close, from the bottom rod is too close to this particular tray, and then the bottom of the cake or the pan that you keep here will get overbaked. There will be too much heat. Now there is also another provision to place this over here, and now this is like too close to the top. So ideally you have to put it in the middle rack, which is this. So a rack like this comes with the oven, and it is also easier to pull it out. Obviously you need an oven mitt, and your pan will go inside. Pan will come and sit on top. Now I have just two pans, aluminium. The Teflon coated to me is a bit expensive. I usually prefer not to have like fancy tools and materials. Try and see this is durable. This is a good quality one. Okay, so this is heavy as well. Heavy, which means it's not going to change the shape. Okay, so a square pan and a round pan. I have in few sizes. You can probably start with like a 6-inch, 5-inch round, and probably like a 5-inch and 7-inch square, or you can even start with just one. So now when I have the batter that is poured into the pan, I'll just get this one out, place the pan here, put it in. Obviously now when there is heat, this is one thing that you will need. Even if you probably don't have that, you can use like a very thick towel at home. But if this one is there, it makes it easier, because you can just grab this, because it will be very, very hot when it is done baking, and then you will remove it off. You can use the oven mitt in both your hands. So obviously the oven mitt comes in pairs. So you will wear your oven mitt in both your hands, remove it so you'll be able to hold it, and then you will just be able to lift the pan to let it cool down. Now, once the baking is done, right, you remove the pan out. Obviously, it will be very hot. So assume this is the pan we baked. So after you take it out of oven, what you really need is the wire rack. So wire rack usually comes with a rise. It is not going to sit on the tabletop. So here is one step down, right? So now you have air that can pass through on the bottom of the wire rack. So when you take the pan from the oven after baking, you place it on the wire rack, and that's what most of the recipes will ask you to do. Now, when you do that, why are we doing that? Why are we not placing it on a table like that? But why is it asked to place it on a wire rack? When you place it on a table, there is no air that is passing through the bottom. There is extreme heat here at the bottom and then on the top, all of the sides as well. So when you place it on a wire rack, there is movement of air under the wire rack, and it helps to cool the bottom of the cake. And obviously on the top, there is enough air that touches the cake, and here also it starts to cool down. You're also helping the bottom also cool, and then both the sides, top and the bottom, gets cooled together, and then you have the cake evenly cooling down. And when you keep it like that, the bottom does not cool initially. It starts to cool from the top, and then slowly it gets cooled to the bottom, and by that time it takes too much of condensation or too much of the moisture of the cake goes up. So the ideal way, so you need a wire rack like this once you take the pan, and then keep it out on the wire rack to cool down. Okay, so obviously cake pans are something you need, wire rack, oven, and the rack that you put your cake into the oven, which is this. Okay, so we've seen all of it now. And then a baking tray, like I said, it comes along with the oven, which fits the size of the oven. It comes with the oven itself. Now, this baking tray can also be used to place your cake pans, right? Now, they have given like too many racks. Are we allowed to use all the racks at the same time? Okay, can I put this one here, and can I put another one, say probably on the top to go in? Now, this is not the size that is fitting into this. Now, can I put something like that? Now, that is something I will not suggest to use on an OTG. In an OTG, always just use one rack at a time, even if there are multiple racks, which is like you could put it here or you could put it there. Don't do that. Always use the middle rack and bake in one layer. But the ovens, right now I have the commercial ovens, they allow you to put too many, what are they? The trays, right? Too many trays, and then I can do in too many layers. That works because it works, with a fan, and it does not operate with a rod like an OTG. But I'm just going to keep it simple to talk about OTG. Now, for cakes, try and put on the wire rack like this. So you have enough heat passing through the bottom and the top. Now, what are these trays used for? Now, these are something where you can put your cookies or something that you can just place on top of the tray, like your pizzas can go, your breads and buns can get baked for whichever baked recipe, where you don't need a cake pan, and then they are in smaller portions. So obviously a brownie can be baked in a pan like this. So this also, brownie will also be treated like a cake. But say probably like a cookie, pizza, buns and stuffs, you need a baking tray. Now on top of a baking tray, what would you need? This is a silicone mat. Okay, so this can be pretty much used. But if you don't want to invest on a silicone mat like this one is a Silpat, which is a bit expensive, somewhere around say probably 500-ish. Okay, but there are like hundreds, 200 ranged silicone mats which you can go for, but they're not durable. They get torn off. The other option to do lining up your baking tray, just keep only this. Lining up your baking tray, if you don't want to invest on the Silpat or silicone mat, then obviously baking paper. So you have baking paper as well, and then parchment paper. I'm going to take out that also. So baking paper comes out in sheets like these, and they are not too expensive, and you can cut them out to the size of your baking tray and then place them out there, and you can start putting your cookies. So you will cut, and then you will retain the other piece to be used for later. So you will only use what you just need at this point of time for the size of the baking tray. Now what you put here, and this has to be trashed. So the baking paper cannot be reused. So now there is another option that you can do, which is the parchment paper. I mean, it is written Eco Bake, heavy duty baking and cooking paper. It's not possibly written as parchment paper, but ideally this is the parchment paper. The look of it is a little different than the baking paper. It's not too shiny. If you see, the baking paper is pretty much shiny. This comes as more of a matte finish. So this is handy to use, but this is expensive than the baking paper. Now you go all the way till the size, and then it's like an aluminum foil roll, and this can be used to line. So when you line with a parchment paper, now you put the parchment paper here, and then you put your cookies, and then this goes into baking. When this goes into baking, obviously you don't need this. So you will remove this out, and you will put only this particular tray in the middle rack, and then get the cookie baking, right? Now, the choice between the baking paper and parchment paper, the parchment paper, when you use once, you can come back to reuse. Now, you put the cookies here, right? You finish baking, and then you can fold this or roll this and then save it to come back to use the same paper again and then use it. So, though this is expensive, the choice that you have to reuse the parchment paper, so it still can be chosen than the butter paper. But I also have the butter paper. At times when you feel like, there is no stock of this, you still have the other option where you can use the butter paper, but you cannot reuse the butter paper. The parchment paper can be reused. Okay. So you have the tray, and then you know how to line it up. And we just talk about the stand mixer. Now, the time when I actually got a stand mixer was like 2-3 years, and that too I didn't buy. A friend of mine actually gifted to me, but this one I did get like 2-3 years back. But a KitchenAid I had a friend of mine gifted. Okay, so don't jump into the fact that you really need a stand mixer. So the other option is the hand beater. This is the Chroma brand, right? And they are all electric, so you need an electric socket to use it. And how do you use the hand beater? So there is a button here where you eject out. Okay, and this is the beater. There is also a dough hook. When you go for an electric hand beater like that, you have two sets of beater blades that come. So this is the regular one, and this is used for making your batter, your cookie dough, your brownies, and all of it. Whenever you have to use an electric beater for making simple baking to any complicated stuff as well, including macaroons, and then you have only the hand beater to go. So this is the beater blade that you will use. There is also another attachment that comes with hand beater, and that looks like this. So this is called as the dough hook. Now this is not very durable for making your bread doughs, but then you could try, and I would suggest instead of using this, you can just go knead the bread dough using the hand. So I don't use this pretty much, but this is also an attachment that comes, and if that comes in handy for you, you can use it. But this is the main attachment we kind of use to beat the batter. So what you usually do, there is the two holes there. You drop it in, fix it, you ensure that it goes and sets itself in, you get that noise, okay, the two sound that you get, and so if you just try to pull it out, it's not going to come, and then you eject it here and then try and pull it out, then it comes. So when you have to start beating, you'll have to plug this in and drop these two inside, and then you'll have to start beating it. Let me show how this switches on. And then you have the speeds here, right? So when you have the speeds, when you switch the speed on, I'm just going to turn the knob. So that is the first speed, right? So it's actually going on, and then there are multiple speeds that I have here. So this is the number one, and then if I just keep increasing, so when any recipe says beat on slow speed, obviously it will be speed number one. Okay, and then when a recipe calls for high speed, then you will go all the way to the top. When a recipe says medium speed, probably you can do like speed 1 or speed 2. I mean, it says medium high, then you will not go to the highest, you will be somewhere below that. I will use that to show how we could beat a set of ingredients as well. But that is how a hand beater works. And now we have the stand mixer. Now there are different brands. Not pretty so happy with this because it is so noisy and not too full of Ajit. So now every stand mixer also is different. So this particular one, obviously there is an eject. Don't try without pressing out the knob that is used for lifting the head, the till top. Don't try to push it with your pressure because then whatever, the mechanics is just going to go for a toss. So try and see what is the knob that is used to release. Now if I just press this, this opens up. Okay, so this is just with agarro. Inalsa is something that a lot of my students have been vouching for. I still don't have an Inalsa yet. So now put the knob up and then you press it, it is going to set. Okay, so I always make sure the knob is touched when I have to release. Now every stand mixer almost looks like this, right? And then it comes with one bowl. And then a set of 3 beater blades. So this one is called as the wire whisk. This one is the paddle attachment. Paddle attachment is this one. Wire whisk is this one. And then there are 3 beater blades when it comes to stand mixers. Is it going to stay? No. So this one is the dough hook. Okay. So now the dough hook for the hand beater looked like this, and the dough hook on a stand mixer looks similar to this. Every brand will have like a different look and feel, right? So now this works very well for making breads. You can use dough hook on the stand mixer. Like I said, I wouldn't suggest this to use the hand beater for the bread doughs for making using the hand beater. Now, like I said, the hand beater has only the other second attachment. The first attachment is this, second is this one, right? Now we don't have a particular wire whisk and a different paddle attachment. Paddle is this attachment called. So now a stand mixer has these 2 options, but a hand beater has only this option. Now every time a recipe calls for in your stand mixer, use a wire whisk and do. Now if you're going to use a stand mixer, you will choose this one to go with it. Now if you do not have a stand mixer, but still your recipe calls for use a wire whisk, but you're going to use a hand beater only, you will choose this beater only, right? Now if a recipe calls for a paddle attachment and your stand mixer, you will still go back to the hand beater if you have only that. And this is the beater blade that will replace both the wire whisk or this particular beater blade and the paddle attachment. These 2 together will make sure the hand beater will do the job. This particular blade will do the job if you're using a hand beater. While you can switch between this one where you have to do a lot of aeration, especially probably when you're beating like egg whites and then trying to make like a meringue and stuff, this is what will be used. And this will be used when you don't need to aerate your batter much. And this is for making cake batter. So we have the beater blades, 3 different kinds for a stand mixer. And obviously the beater blades on a stand mixer will be fit. So you will know how it fits. You will have to go check. Every beater is different, right? Okay, so I'm just going to fix it here, turn it, and then lock it. So now this will get fixed. The same thing will happen for now. How do you remove it? You just lift it up. I'm putting pressure to lift it up, and then I'm just removing. The same thing will happen if you have to fix the wire beater blade. I'm just going to check. I'm going to lift and then lock it. When you lock, then this gets fixed. Same thing will be now if I remove, push it up and then release it. Same will happen with the, this is the dough hook. So you will fix whichever hook is necessary for the kind of recipe that you're going to do. Now, you could fit the beater blade and then place your bowl depending on the brand or the kind of stand mixer. Now, this is a pretty much simple stand mixer. So I have the bowl. I put the bowl in. I have to fix the bowl and then lock it. Now it is fit in. And then locking, which means it just becomes tight and then it's not going to be easy. Now, if I have to remove, now if I lift this, I will not be able to lift, right? Now, if I have to remove, I have to twist it and then remove. So that locking is something that you need to see where it gets locked. Turn it, tighten it. So once you remove, it's just not going to get removed. And after placing the bowl as well, you can go in and then fix the beater blade. So you have the bowl attached to the stand mixer and then the beater blade is also stuck. And obviously to put this down, go find this particular knob, press it and then, so you can have this particular thing without getting damaged, without getting broken, or try and don't lift this, try and don't, don't manhandle so much. Just once you invest in this, this is like a baby and then you just need to take care of it like a baby. That is what I would do, right? So now the beaters are done. Which model of agarro stand mixer would you suggest for home use? Agarro seems to be pocket friendly compared to KitchenAid. Try the Inalsa. Agarro I know is even more less expensive than Inalsa. However, we haven't been very happy with this. The beater blade doesn't even touch the bottom of the bowl. Sometimes we kind of like lift this up and then we know how to work around it. But for probably a beginner, this is just not doing justice. This is my idea about agarro. But Inalsa, you have like in 6,000 ranges, 8,000, 9,000. You can just go through reviews. But I will not be able to just tell you because a lot of students ask me, tell me one brand, one model number. I have to all go and invest on that because I cannot tell you. See, probably like you can do like a 5K, 6K. Sometimes even a 12K is okay for you. So that is a choice that you need to take. How much investment would you like to do? Now, when you're ready with that, I can say Inalsa works. Obviously, KitchenAid comes on the higher side. You can go ahead and then invest if you know that you can put in that much money. However, my suggestion is not that. Like I said, I really like to start slow and start with less. So Inalsa, and even before that, if you have been trying a lot with the hand beater and you feel like you are going to continuously keep grinding, keep baking day in and day out, and then probably your arms are like building up muscles and that is how much time and effort that you feel like you really want to put on baking. And then you go for probably Inalsa, starting from 6K to around 12K, you can just fix on any model numbers that really works based on the pricing. And you can read through the reviews on Amazon to see, because I myself, just me alone, wouldn't have all the experience to just talk about one brand and say, hey, it works, okay. But there are like thousands of people out there who have tried out and then they have multiple reviews coming up. So an Amazon review really will work. The same oven and both rods heat up in grill mode. Bake mode heats up only the bottom rods. Yes, this one. So for baking cakes and cookies, I will have to use grill mode and not bake mode. This I did not know. Okay, so now that you know, you need to try to bake with both the rods on. Stand mixer for bread baking also works. Like I said, I don't know. I haven't tried, but a lot of people have vouched for Inalsa. I might go for Inalsa, but I'm also thinking just because I have like a very huge kitchen right now, I probably will go for like a 25-liter bigger commercial stand mixer rather than probably go on for an Inalsa because Agarro and the KitchenAid, like we have 3 stand mixers that keep working for us. So, but Inalsa is something that you can actually invest. Now we finished off with the stand mixers. And now we have to show how this one actually works. I think in one of the recipes, I think we'll show. So you have the knobs and then you have the speeds here. Okay. So these are the speeds, like I said, for the hand beater. The speed just increases. This is the highest. And then when the recipe calls for like a planetary stand mixer, let me just show how it works. So we see now we need to fix just one of the beater blade. And I put it down, right? And then I'm going to turn the knob. So you turn the knob and then it's going to start working. Stop put a couple of minutes. So I'm increasing the speed. So obviously the empty bowl is just going to give you that noise. So with the ingredients inside, it's just going to get things over. Okay, so we'll actually get to put something. So you know, so what really happens here is this particular, we call it planetary side. We call it a planetary machine, right? So what really happens? Oh, I think this will start moving only if I put this down. Okay, so what actually happens is this one goes around. It is like a planetary thing, like the earth moves around the sun. That movement also happens and this also rotates. So there are two movements that happen in a stand mixer and that makes it faster and easier for the batter that we are making to happen quickly. Now when you use a hand beater for that, I'm going to use a hand beater to show. So what I usually do, so when I switch this on, now this is going to rotate, right? I also use my hand to go around. So I try and create the planetary movement rather than just letting the beater alone do the stuff. Now you have to use your hands to get the planetary movement that a stand mixer will give. So like I said, this one goes around. Okay, so this also just keeps going around in a circle. This part, this is just in the starting, right? I don't know if it's going to make that noise. So you see, right? At least some part of the angle just showed you. Now this also goes around, like the earth moving around the sun, and then earth also rotates by itself, right? That's probably too much of geography. What subject is that? So this also rotates in its own axis, and then this goes around also, and then you call it a planetary mixer. Stand mixer is also called planetary mixer, right? So when, like I said, when you use a hand beater, you do the movement, rotation and the revolution part. So this one beats and then your hand also should go in rounds. Okay, so the beaters are done. Now if you don't even have a beater, can you actually do it without a beater? See, sometimes, yes, like I said, I have done that years back. I'll show you how. So even before using the silicone spatula, you have the silicone spatula here. Side. And then a wire whisk. This is also something that comes in only after probably you start baking. Before even baking, you really don't have this, but this is not a huge investment. Wire whisk is also something that you can try starting to use your hand, and then there comes in a few different bowls. You can use the bowls that you have at home. So just to have stainless steel. Now, when you have a stainless steel bowl, ideally in home situations, so stainless steel bowls probably you have is to pour your curry and keep. So the bottom is quite flat, you know, a flat like probably like your cake pan. So, you know, it just stays flat on the surface and it does not tilt. But a bowl for baking ideally should be curved like this at the bottom. So try and not have sharp corners inside your pan. So you are able to just use this spatula. This is called silicone spatula. Why? Because it is flexible here, and when you have your batter done, you'll be able to go and scrape off properly. So when you want to scrape off, you want all rounded edges inside. So scraping happens quite seamlessly, easily. Now, a stainless steel bowl to have a non, what do you call, sharp corner on the inside is not too easy. But try and get a stainless steel bowl. It looks very rounded here, but you can see that there is one sharp side, but that is pretty minimal. But you have the rounded sides around in the inside. So try and choose a stainless steel bowl which is not too flat. Okay. So now there are these bowls, and this is also rounded, but you can see like the stainless steel bowl, you also have a pretty much sharp edge here, but it is also shaped very much curved on the sides. So these are the bowls that will come in handy when you have to bake, not the curry pouring regular stainless steel bowls that you use for your home cooking. Comes in a bit difficult, but you can still use. But if you're going to buy anything specific for baking, try and ensure you have these properties in the bowl, which is like rounded on the inside, and even if it is flat, let the flat area be pretty much minimal. Now when I have these bowls, I can use the spatula, but then you have to cream your butter and sugar. Now you might have to use your hand. Okay, this is the action you will do, and then keep doing it for like forever. But then those are times when even I was doing like for 15 minutes, which the stand mixer will probably finish it off in like 4 minutes. I will do it with my hand for 15 minutes. Obviously, hands will ache. But then if you really have to invest on the money, or if you want to try and see, if you really are interested in doing it, you can use this wire whisk and the bowl and then actually do the cake. But it is going to take more time than what a hand beater will do. Okay. So we have the bowls, your silicone spatula. I have quite a few. You can probably start with like 2 or 3, and then wire whisk. This one is pretty sturdy. There are wire whisks which probably is like not as sturdy as this. It just snips itself out. Not so good quality. So you see what you want to invest. Now, so probably investing on a 70 rupees, 80 rupees, and that may not be durable. This could probably be like a 150 to 200, and it is like a heavy one, and that will just stay with you like forever. So you have the bowls, your wire whisk, and then the spatula, and obviously this one comes in picture, which is the sieve. Why? Because the dry ingredients that we kind of want to mix it together, and it needs to be combined well. So most of the recipes start with sift your all-purpose flour, baking powder, baking soda, salt, cocoa powder, corn flour. A lot of dry ingredients should combine together. Rather than putting the ingredients directly in the bowl and then trying and using your hands, like what do you do for a chapati or a roti making, right? We don't necessarily use these tools. We kind of put the whole wheat flour, some salt, mix it, pour water, and then start kneading. That is our home stuff. But baking comes with a little bit more precision than your home cooking. So we want to use a sieve, a metal sieve. A smaller bowl, a smaller one will go, and a bigger one can be used. And you put your dry ingredients onto this particular metal sieve, and then you want to tap and sieve and get the dry ingredients here. So everything is mixed well. So a sieve is also essential, right? And then we have measuring spoon, cups, measuring spoons, weighing stuffs. The weighing scale, I have the regular weighing scale, and then there is micro weighing scale as well. I'm going to talk about that. And then a serrated knife, topper. And then this one, you call it an angular spatula, right? Straight spatula. So this is a cute, it also looks cute, but it works as well. So when you have to probably like break the eggs, this is the wire whisk. The other one that I showed was a very big one. I also have this one, but then a fork will work too, right? So but then the wire whisk is there. Kitchen knives, where I have a few big ones. So knives. And then I have some scraper. Now if you have to start with probably breads, plastic scraper like this is also there, another plastic scraper, and then a metal scraper. You can just cut your doughs, bread doughs, and these come in handy. Okay. So now for just for cutting, you don't really need to go for this. A knife also will work. A kitchen knife also will work. Now I said now this one is the angular metal spatula. Now here is the one that is not angular. Side cut lama. Okay, so now this is angular because it goes bent like that. Now this one is straight. There is no bending here. Now straight spatula also works, and then an angular spatula also works in different cases. For frosting the cake, I suggest to use an angular spatula, and there is also different kinds of angular spatula. So when it is bent here on the sides like this, right, then you call it angular. But then when you see on the other side, the shape changes. There is like sharp edges here on the top. Here there is just a rounded edge on the top. But then both works for different purposes, and these are angular spatulas, while this one is a straight metal spatula. And I call the other one the silicon spatula. So this is also called a spatula. Angular metal spatula is this one. Angular straight spatula. Angular metal spatula. I mean, no, this is not angular. This is angular. This is a metal spatula. This is angular metal spatula, and this one is called silicon spatula. So when someone is saying like spatula, now you need to know what spatula is that. Now this one, spatula, right? So this is a silicon spatula used for just mixing up the batter and then putting things together or scraping out the bowl. This one works. An angular spatula works to frost cakes, a bent one. And then the straight one also works for the cakes, to work on the sharp edges of the cake and stuff like that, or to just line the top and things like that. So this one is not bent. Okay. So now spatulas, wire whisk, you know, and then knife is just a simple kitchen knife that you will already have. Like I said, these scrapers come in picture when you have to cut the dough or then make bread doughs. Serrated knife is to even after the cake is baked, we'll use this to cut. So this is something you can think of, because now this has the teeth, or what do you call? Can you see? Now this has the up and down teeth here. This is not a plain kitchen knife. You call it serrated knife. This comes in handy, and because of this hacksaw kind of motion, right? You can just use it to cut, and so the cut is pretty much neat and not like a simple kitchen knife. Okay. So, and this I know, I showed the oven mitt. You need to take the hot stuffs out of the oven. And the piping bag I have to even fill the batter. We generally pour the batter directly into the pan, but then we fill any icing, or say probably you're just going to use it to measure. Now there is cupcake, and then you want to like properly measure the cupcake batter in every pan that you're going to use. You can even fill the batter in this, and then you snip this on the end, and then you hold it to pipe whatever you're going to put inside. If there is any icing session, probably then in the future I will come, but then piping bags are also an essential thing that you can have only when you feel like you want to fill and then use. Now coming back to last, which I have here with me, is these are measuring jars. Okay, I have the measuring cups, measuring spoons, and then I have the weighing scale. This is the regular weighing scale, and that is the micro weighing scale. Obviously, here I have, which I didn't show initially as well. This is a huge 60 by 40 is what we call. It's like centimeters. This 40 and 60 centimeters. This is a bigger tray because my oven is big, and so I can just use this to put as many cookies or as many cupcakes here and then bake. So this is my baking tray because the oven that I have gives me such a big tray. Now, if you're going to use an OTG, then that specific baking tray is what you will use for your oven. Now, then I have this regular weighing scale, micro weighing scale, taking measuring cups, measuring spoons, measuring jars, and then we move on to using up the ingredients. So I just take the either out Ajit oven வெளியில எடுத்துட்டு ingredients. We just move on to the second section. I'm going to use these to show how you can measure. So we are done with the first section, which talks about all the tools and materials. So we now move on to some of the ingredients. I'm just reading some of the comments. So all the necessary ingredients, which is going to be the second section for today's live. So just keep them on either side. I'm just going to pick them up to just first brief out what these are. And for measuring, that is the third section I said, what are the right and the wrong ways of measuring, okay? So first one comes in maida, the one that always people try and say like, hey, unhealthy maida and stuff, but obviously we are baking, we are feeding out to a lot of people, but we are not feeding staple as much as we have to just convince ourselves. Obviously now moving on to when I'm feeding like main food, like probably sandwiches, pizzas, I'm trying to do a whole wheat without preservatives, and so at least make it look like, hey, I'm eating like a roti, and then you have like a sabji. And so that is what it will make to eat a pizza that I sell or a sandwich that I sell. So I'm trying to move on from maida to whole wheat if I'm going to feed anybody the main meal itself. But when it comes to desserts, they are indulgence. So we know we are using up a lot of maida. We're trying to see the alternate source of how we can probably cut down on the maida. That is one thing. But when it comes to completely about baking, is something that you want to learn, begin to learn the traditional way, because you know I keep telling my students or anybody that I meet when I talk about baking and all that, see, these are not Indian sweets, right? Now we know probably we could do gulab jamuns, laddu, and anything else that you can probably think of. All the Indian sweets is something that has come from our generations. So we have already tried making them from generations, and the recipes have been passed to us from generations. Now, depending on whether you're a South Indian or North Indian or wherever you are, you have your family dessert at home that you probably make for your festivals and all that, right? Now, when it comes to Western desserts, and that is what we are all crazy about, baking, and baking is just not been in the Indian generations, right? We are learning something from the Western stuff, because it is very, very therapeutic baking, and that is why so many just really want to do that, and actually trying and getting like a perfect dessert sometimes just happens. Trying and being a prodigy, people just try out 4-5 recipes and then they are really great at that. But some people really want to try out, and then they really need guidance to get the right recipe, and then they have to try out a few times, and then they know that they can give it out to your friends and relatives, and then probably they want to just start selling after a point. Now, why I always start with maida, like I said, this is not probably like baking is something that does not come from our generations. We need to know what is the core, what is the traditional way of baking. Westerners had tried, and then when you call it grandma's recipe, our grandma, probably at least my grandma, never baked a cake. Now, when you call like a grandma's pound cake recipe, there was a grandma, or there is a grandma, right? And in the Western countries where they have been baking for years, and from then is, so you take up any dessert or any recipe, like baked recipe, it has an origin from different other countries, and then we call it like French opera, and then probably then something is Spanish, and then there is a dessert from Germany, and then most of it in the US, and you know, it has just come from different other places. Now, they all used maida, probably because it was just so easily available there. So most of the desserts start with maida. So, but probably we can just be mindful of how much we are feeding ourselves, our family, and also giving it out, selling. And we have to ensure that this is indulgence, and you eat something with maida, you can't keep it like a main food, but then there is sugar in it, there is butter in it, and sometimes they are deep fried. Yes, we have to be aware of what we are making and what we are selling. And then probably we can't probably call like a cake in which you've added dates in it and then call like a healthy cake, because you're feeding date in the form of putting it inside maida, butter, sugar, and a lot of it. And then for that one particular date, I'll see like, and people really, when you're asking me about, I want to learn healthy baking, I want to do ragi cake, for a very long time I kept telling, if you want to eat healthy, go and make ragi roti and eat ragi roti to keep it healthy. I mean, eat cakes and desserts only as an indulgence, because you know what goes inside it, which is maida. But then in the recent year that I've actually been doing the Patisserie, where I know the clients come in and eat, so I've just started being a little bit more mindful about what I need to give it out. So my brownies are whole wheat, obviously when the sugar is there. So I know that just because I'm making brownies with whole wheat, I can't go and feed someone with diabetes and then say, oh, take your brownie and then probably get one more pill of insulin or whatever. No, that probably may not work. So you have to be mindful. And because I just don't want to open this maida and say, oh, what a great product or what a great ingredient. It starts with maida, and we have to know that. Okay. So all-purpose flour is the foremost ingredient to start with anything to do with baking, traditional baking. Okay, it starts with this. Now, this particular box container. Okay, so now I usually like to have the all-purpose flour in a wide opened container like that, because then I will be able to just put my hand in, and then I will be able to measure. Okay. So I don't want to have the all-purpose flour probably in a small container like that, or even a container like this. I don't want to use anything like that, because I will not be able to put my hand in with the measuring cup and then take my hand out. So a wide opened container is what I would suggest, because measuring it is so important, and you don't want to just keep, because for very long time I had maida in packets like this in my kitchen pantry when I used to bake from home, and I used to just get it out from the packet and then keep the same packet there. I never even found a container earlier times when I started, because I always thought this was not part of my staple. And then eventually I ended up having like the biggest container to hold all-purpose flour, and then we have the all-purpose flour. So you should be able to just go on, loosen up, put your hand in, and then collect as much of the flour and then take it out. Okay, so now we have maida. I'll show you how you measure it in the next section. And then you have sugar. Another product, probably we call it unhealthy. Is it sugar, Dana? Okay, so sugar is also coming from a huge container. So that is the second most used ingredient. Now, where I get my sugar from, you can have your pari, or you can even use the sugar that you use for your coffee or tea. However, I just want to exposure. I want to show the size of the granules of the sugar. It's like very fine. நம்மகிட்ட அந்த குண்டு குண்டு சக்கரை இருக்கா? சுத்தமா இல்லையா? சுத்தமா இல்லையா? எங்க அக்கா சக்கரை போட்டுட்டு வச்சு காஃபி டீ. I want to show how the like really bigger granules are. We just try to cut down on using that, because but probably when you are doing it, you may end up having like bigger granules. I tell you what you can do, but the granule size of the sugar, close cutting Ashwin. Okay, so it's like really fine. So that is what you want to do. Same. Okay. So bigger granule sugar, if you have, you can just powder it in mixie and then get it to finer powder like this and use, but don't powder it to make it like complete powder. Like it shouldn't be fine powder, okay? So sugar which is having granules as small as this is important. So we have, this is the regular granulated white sugar. And then we have brown sugar. I think Mawana, Pari also is fine. No? Brown sugar, Pari also works. Mawana also works. Mawana I think is available in baking supply store. Pari, brown sugar is probably available on Zeptos and Zomatos. Not Zomato. The Instamart, Zeptos and Swiggy Instamart is what I'm talking about. And then we have castor sugar. Now castor sugar is something that is finer than the regular granulated sugar. Just put, I don't know, that's a black bowl in the we can put in that smaller black bowls. Black ingella. Sugar on this black bowl, so you see the difference in the granule sizes. So into this I am putting the regular sugar. So the sugar that I get is like the 50 kilo bigger, larger quantity. So it's not Pari. So these does not come with a brand, because I use in larger volumes, I get it in bigger sacks. So that is the regular sugar. And then I think this is Pari. Same Mawana. So now this is brown sugar. So they may just get together and become lumpy. The brown sugar, but you can check, I think the granules are quite fine only. They are not too moist. They are dry. They are brown in color and then they are moist. And now I have the castor sugar. I want to put it in this. The castor sugar is finer granules than the regular granulated white sugar. Itself is pretty fine, and castor sugar is even finer than the granulated white sugar. Castor sugar is expensive. So unless the recipe calls for castor sugar, especially in finicky recipes like cheesecake, don't use castor sugar in a recipe. Don't think because it is fine, your cake is going to turn out like extra good. It doesn't work like that. When a recipe calls for granulated white sugar, the recipe expects the sugar to be having some sort of shape or hold the granules. So the recipe itself works because it needs the sugar to have some form of granules. It's icing sugar either. And then you have icing sugar is a mixture of regular granulated sugar and corn flour. But you don't make it at home. You kind of buy the icing sugar. It's like super fine. You can see it is like powder. It's very fine. I just put it in my hand to show how it looks like. It's like a powder. There are no grains at all. So because this has corn flour also in it, unless the recipe calls for icing sugar or confectioner's sugar or powdered sugar. Confectioner's sugar is something that people have been using probably 10 years back. I know some very senior Western bakers have used that term. I don't see it recently enough. But when the recipe calls for icing sugar or powdered sugar, You can try, think of using the icing sugar. I think this is the pack, icing sugar pack. Okay. So icing sugar, the brand that we get is Mavana. I think it's not Mavana. 5 kg. So the icing sugar that I get is also not very branded because I get in 5 kgs. So these are the sugars. Now this one, like I said, granulated white sugar, um, caster sugar, icing sugar, and then we have brown sugar. You see the granules in this are a little bigger, but you need it as small as this. Caster sugar is finer than the granulated sugar. Icing sugar is like a complete powder, and then you have the brown sugar. Okay, so this is all the sugars that you will mainly be using. So sugar part is done. Then corn flour. இது next important ingredient that we need is butter, and all the time just choose to use unsalted butter. Any brand works. We get Amul, right? And unsalted butter is what we use. And usually keep it in the fridge, and when you're ready to bake, keep this out of the refrigerator half an hour, and you want the butter to be firm, not too soft, but not too hard. So half an hour out of the refrigerator is what is essential. And then we need baking powder, baking soda. Inga irukku idu corn flour. Then we have baking soda and then baking powder. Salt is also needed. Okay, so we need baking powder, baking soda, salt. And those are tiny bits used in like minimal quantity, but they play very important roles. Baking powder and baking soda, the leavening agents that gives the rise to the baked product. And that will be there in cookies, even not pretty much on brownies, but will be there in all of the cake recipes. Baking powder will be used where you don't have any acid ingredient, where I don't want to put in a lot of science to this particular session because you're calling it beginners. But when you see where baking soda is used and then where baking powder is used, and then why sometimes both are used, and probably why sometimes there is only soda used, and then why baking powder alone is used. So baking powder and baking soda, both are leavening agents. Leavening agents itself means it is going to give a rise to the product. Now say you're doing like a pancake, you have the cake batter, and without the baking powder and baking soda, if you bake, it is not going to rise and give the airy, spongy texture inside. A lot of other process in the cake making um, process, right? The method and the steps that you're going to do, they will also have a very important role in giving the cake its rise. But the baking soda and baking powder becomes very essential to lift your cake and then give the rise, right? So if you say baking powder already has the acid in it, but the baking soda, if you use, that does not have an acid in it. So baking powder is baking soda less an acid. It already has two parts, the baking powder. So when you use a baking powder, probably in like a vanilla cake recipe which uses eggs, and there is no other acid that is used in that particular recipe. So the ingredients predominantly will start with butter, sugar, egg, vanilla, all-purpose flour, baking powder, salt, and milk. Now, in all of this, there is no acid ingredient. Acid sometimes is like curd is an acid, lime juice is citric acid, vinegar has some acid. So, cocoa powder is also acidic. So, if there are ingredients that are acidic in that particular recipe, then you will find baking soda coming in picture. Because if there is acid in it and baking soda does not have acid, and the acid in the recipe and the baking soda will combine together, and then the leavening will happen in that particular recipe. Now, the times when there is baking powder, which I'm saying there is already an acid in it and baking soda. Baking powder is two elements put together, which is the baking soda and the acid. Now, baking soda is just baking soda. It needs an acid in the recipe for it to start its reaction. So, whenever you see baking soda is being used, you can find the recipes having curd in it, the recipe is probably having lime juice in it, the recipe is having cocoa powder in it. So, there are ingredients which is acidic in nature where you will find baking soda, and there are certain times in a recipe that there is no acid in it. Think about in simple terms of a vanilla cake, an egg version where there is no curd used, and so baking powder alone will come into picture to give the leavening. But eggless vanilla cake, we predominantly use curd as one of the main ingredients. Now, when curd comes in picture, curd is acidic. So, when curd is there, baking soda will come in. So, now if it's just a very, like a very, very broad explanation of where the baking powder and baking soda will be used. However, if you don't want to just go behind a lot of science and try to figure out, hey, why, if you're not very curious about it, then you can just simply follow the recipe. But basic understanding, every time you see a baking soda in a recipe, go figure out, hey, which is that acidic ingredient there? Why is the baking soda there? So you will just start trying to relate to why is there baking soda and why is not baking soda in a recipe. And most times baking powder is there. And there also sometimes when there is no baking powder also, and because it is a beginner class, I don't want to ask like, hey, tell me which recipe, but I know a lot of my students are also watching. So could you tell like probably which of the baking product we don't even have like a baking powder and you still want it to get baked? It's very delicious. If you can figure out anything like that, have you baked before without a baking powder but baked? And then you have something which probably baking powder is not there. What are we expecting out of it? It is not going to rise. It has to be fudgy. Now, without rice, what is the baking product that you predominantly use? Brownies. So, brownies is one place where baking powder may not have come, but so because you don't want it to rise like a cake, brownie is not a cake, you want it to make it fudgy, less tall, less rice. So, it is looking fudgy, it is very delicious, and then you eat. So, other possibility that you don't want a leavening agent at all, but then there is a product that can get baked and delicious, which is brownie, like I said. So, baking powder, baking soda, and then salt. Someone has asked, how do you store? How to store baking powder, baking soda if you don't bake regularly? It's like airtight container, room temperature still works, but then there will also be an expiry date for that particular baking powder. So when you buy in smaller portions, the back of the pack will tell you how long is expiry. But if you haven't used in probably like 6 months or 1 year expiry date that the baking powder is told in the back of the pack, then even if you store it properly in your room temperature, when the expiry comes, you might have to trash it, right? So as long as the expiry is there in an airtight container, properly tight, and then like your regular pulses and the rest of the other ingredients you store in your house, this also just gets stored the same way. Salt, like I said, we use unsalted butter, and then we use salt separately in every recipe. Why? Because the unsalted butter has a little excess salt that comes in all of the baked dishes. I have liked using salted butter to make a vanilla pound cake and eat it. So when I have salted butter only, that is the only choice I have. Can I just bake or not bake? Now that I use unsalted butter all the time, I try and have to stock with me. But say at your home and you want to bake and then you went to buy the butter and then you found everywhere you didn't get unsalted butter. Can you go with salted butter? Yes, you can. You can buy the salted butter and cut out the salt from your recipe. Don't use salt from your recipe. There is one advantage and disadvantage, both ways you can say. The salted butter gives an excess salty feeling to your product. Now, when you do that, I like pound cake, vanilla egg based pound cake with salted butter, because that excess salt makes it feel like the dish is like so delicious. All the Indian sweets that we make, there is a pinch of salt that we add, right? Because that settles down the sweetness and increases the flavor of the dessert, and it make it feel like you want to crave for more. So that salt addition is so very essential and crucial. So salt, even if it is a pinch, a quarter of a teaspoon, it is like so important to have salt in the recipe. Now, by using unsalted butter and then using the salt as per measurement in the recipe, allows you to control how much salt you need. Now, even if I'm giving a recipe that calls for like 1/4 of a teaspoon, depending on the brand of the salt that you guys use, the salt in the end product of your cake or cookie may vary, and so you can reduce the salt in the recipe or you can increase the salt in the recipe, and you have control. So why we use unsalted butter? Because we have better control of how much salt we can have in the end product of the baked dessert that we make, cake or cookie or whatever, right? And then we have simple ingredients can come, which is corn flour. And there are certain recipes that call for corn flour, and then sometimes there is also cake flour, but I don't buy cake flour. I use corn flour and then I make my own cake flour, which is addition of corn flour, little bit will just make your cake very, very soft with a very tender crumb. Those are terms that we kind of say, but we have to feel the cake to understand what a tender crumb in a cake means. So corn flour will be used like 2 tablespoons or 1 tablespoon, not in all the recipes, but then once in a while. And then we have cocoa powder. We have a spoon inside. Okay, so it comes with a lot of lumps. Very, very fine. The cocoa powder we use is Van Houten 45. Medium dark, and 45. 45 what? The packet is there? We don't have the packet. Van Houten packet in the cocoa powder area. We've used up everything from the store. Okay, I think it's transferred. So what we have is Van Houten's medium dark. Why? Because I live in Chennai, and Chennai's palette is not too much of a dark. This is very dark. Ashwin. கொஞ்சம் ஏத்த சொல்றா. Okay, so this is medium dark. Okay, yeah. So I prefer in the place, the city that I live in, people not too much of a dark chocolate fans. So I stick to the medium dark. Medium brown. So it's already opened and used, but I just want to show the cocoa powder that I use. Van Houten is the brand. Van Houten Professional Cocoa Powder, medium brown. What else is written? 10 to 12% cocoa butter, original Dutch processed cocoa powder. So I really prefer this. It's not too bitter. Obviously, we transfer it into a airtight container. We just put it back. We cling wrap this entire thing and then we put it in the store. You need to check for the expiry date and then use it before that. So cocoa powder comes in for chocolate cakes, chocolate cupcakes, making a fudge frosting, right? And obviously eggs. For eggless people, there are alternatives, and I know if I'm going to do one recipe with egg, there will be like another eggless recipe requirement. So I thought I'll go ahead and then do an eggless recipe itself as demonstration. So you know how eggs look like. For those who don't, this is how it looks. So now, most of the recipes, at least 10 years back, when I started baking, there used to be like large egg. Every recipe, probably like every 4 in 5 recipes will say large egg. But now then it happened to be like any egg works. Don't go behind. And there used to be like bakers, as we started, we used to go crazy going behind the egg shops who sell like large egg. This is a medium sized egg. but definitely okay. Now, whenever a recipe calls for big, there used to be confusion. And there used to be like, people used to be confused because a large egg will be like 50 grams and 60 grams when you break it. The weight is like too much, which is 50 grams. So when you bake the egg that we get in our place, it's like 40 grams, 42 grams. Now, because Westerners have created the recipes, and then if you have to work with them, and now my egg is not as, the egg that I use is not as huge as the ones that are being used in the people who actually formulated the recipes. Now then we ended up using by weight to match to what the eggs they have been using, the larger ones. And then the recipes really didn't turn out pretty well. So we just see the recipe that calls for 3 eggs. We use 3 eggs of whatever size you have. It like pretty much works fair. So don't get confused about large eggs or small eggs. But sometimes I even work with recipes that even gives in grams. So when someone is giving you a recipe with grams, including me, and it says like 45 grams or 25 grams, and then what you do, you take the egg, break it, use a fork, mix the yolk and the white completely like how you will do it for making an omelette, but don't put onions and all in it, nothing, just the eggs, mix it well and break the yolk and the white together, and then take from a like literally fully mixed up egg, weigh that into 20 grams or 25 grams every time a recipe calls you for a certain grams of the egg. But when a recipe calls for 1 egg, just choose 1 egg, break it and use. So it is just going to be fine irrespective of how much weight probably somebody else used. Now, if I have used a egg that is just going to be like 40 grams, if you are in a different country and you're going to use a egg that is really large and then it's going to weigh 50 grams, just go ahead and then use. It just works fine. So that is with the egg. And fat I just spoke about. I'll show oil, and the other small stuff of the ingredients what I have is vanilla. It's not small, it's like one important ingredient why I feel like, Fondbites Patisserie products are like so delicious because of the vanilla that I use. So this is the one vanilla that I suggest my students to use in case pricing comes in as a challenge. Then I would suggest to use Bush. It's less expensive. How much it is? $5.59 for 500 ml. Okay. So this is that one vanilla I just used to. Just pour and show how they look. So Bush vanilla looks almost like vanilla extract. Okay. So I'll pour it back into the same can. I don't use this pretty much, and that's why it's just not stocked up. I don't keep stocking up quite often unless there is some trial where I know I don't have to use real vanilla. So that is how it looks. And now this is vanilla extract. This is the brand I use. Then that it is not available here in India. I try and source it from the US. Most of them have like quite a lot of the stock. And this one is pure vanilla. It says in the ingredients. Idana closer. Top cut. It says vanilla bean extractives. Idhilum focus agadilla top la. Cut side. It says vanilla bean extractives and water and alcohol. So that is the ingredient of this particular vanilla. So this is the vanilla extract that I use. So I just want to pour. Use pannanadilla. Galia. So in most of the recipes, so where I use vanilla extract is when it goes inside the oven. Darker, darker. Yeah. So that is the vanilla extract, wasting most of it. Okay, just for you to see how it looks like in the liquid form. You can see it is like little darker than the IFF. So when it goes inside the oven, when heat comes in contact with the product, I use the extract, which is the liquid. It does not have the vanilla bean in it. Now this one is the vanilla bean paste. This also is not available here. I get from US. Why? Because the flavor that comes out of this is so nice, pure vanilla. So all the products that I bake and sell from the Fondbites Patisserie, even for the trials that I do for classes and all that, I want to know if it tastes like really nice, and that is done using the vanilla bean paste. So this is a opened bottle. I just want to show how it looks. This is like gold, is what I call baker's gold. Okay, so I just want to pour so you can see how the vanilla looks like. It is very thick and not like the liquid, not like the extract. So this I use when heat does not come in contact. Pastry cream, buttercream, whipped cream, all the mousse that I do will have the vanilla bean paste. So this one you call it paste, which has the beans. The specks of the bean is something that you can see, right? And in this you can't see the specks, it's just liquid, and this is the artificial vanilla. So this one is IFF, this one is the vanilla extract, and this one is the vanilla bean paste. And these two are the ones that I really use, and this one is for the students that I would recommend them using that. Okay, so vanilla is done. So you can try and do bush. You can also use Ozoro and Fab are the brands that I would otherwise recommend. And what are the other ingredients? Condensed milk comes in picture. Side. Condensed milk comes in picture. Curd comes in picture at times. You can use homemade curd also, or you can use store-bought. Condensed milk obviously is store-bought. And instant coffee powder comes in picture. I just buy in sachets, or if you have to make your instant coffee at home and then you have it stored in your home, then you can use that. Milk comes in picture. We try and use the full cream milk. Any brand is fine. We're trying to use full cream milk for better results. And oil comes in picture. In times when there is like a non-butter recipe, fat, this is the fat. So even oil comes in picture for oil-based recipes where butter probably is not there, and then oil will be used. Any cooking oil, flavorless oil, say they are not like say groundnut, they're not groundnut oil, no olive oil, no groundnut oil, no oil that are flavored. So what you use for baking is cooking flavorless oil. So whenever it says for oil 100 ml or whatever the recipe calls for, you'll buy probably the sunflower oil or any oil you feel and you get is just not having any flavor at all. Flavorless cooking oil is what you will use for baking, right? And then I think we are coming to the end of all the ingredients, which is the last one. I want to show the chocolate. Chocolate will be used like probably in chocolate cake or making ganache, which is the cream or even buttercream. So now what I have here is compound. So there are two kinds of chocolate. Couverture, which is the real chocolate, and compound, which is not the real chocolate, but probably like a fake version, but there is just don't want to demean compound because of the cost and the feasibility that it allows us to bake and serve a lot of chocolate stuffs without having to pinch your pockets and without having to pinch our clients' pockets as well. But there used to be times when I think the chocolate price hike came in like about less than 2 years ago. And I used to be using only Coverture until then. I never probably used Calabo because of the cost again. But when Van Houten came in picture, it was Coverture, and it was not very expensive, was affordable. So I could just make the product even for the students do in the class, and then even for the Patisserie orders and all that, I was using all Van Houten Coverture. But then the price hiked like so many times more, and then I started moving on to compound. So I'm like not trying and demeaning compound anymore. Varillaya. Hmm? So this is the Van Houten. Not very much buying a lot more of the Van Houten, even the chocolate these days. Now this one will say the ingredients will have cocoa butter, milk solid. So when the ingredient here, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see, but then when you buy a chocolate, you will find cocoa butter as part of the ingredient. So any brand will work for you. No? Now whenever you go, you're in a different country, and then you're going to get a chocolate where check for the ingredients. If it calls for cocoa butter, then which means it is a real chocolate. We have some old stock of the dark and milk as well. It's like become like a museum thing for us in our kitchen. So now what I showed here is Van Houten's white chocolate. More like this will just stay with us like a museum thing. So I have it to show. Now this one says dark chocolate, which is also Van Houten. It says 46.5%, because like I said, I don't like it too dark. There is also a 55%, which probably I just never used because I never wanted to do like really, really dark and bitter thing. And it says 46.5% cocoa. Now if you see the ingredients, it says cocoa solids, sugar, cocoa butter. So now this will also have cocoa butter. And this one you can look into the color and then check, it is milk chocolate. So you have this really dark, that will say that is the dark chocolate. This is milk chocolate, and that is white chocolate. So in chocolate itself you have three different flavors. No, it's not flavor, it is a chocolate itself. So depending on the percentage of cocoa butter that is used, this one is called dark chocolate, this one is called milk, and then you have white chocolate. And this Van Houten brand comes as a couverture, which means it is real chocolate where cocoa butter will be there in the ingredients. Now then come to Morde. Morde also has couverture. The color of the pack will be a bit of ivoryish, creamish color. That is also couverture only, real chocolate. Now, if you have to find whether your chocolate is real chocolate, couverture chocolate or not, then you go to the ingredients. I'm trying to find it here. This one says, the compound, milk compound says, sugar, edible, vegetable, fat, hydrogenated, milk solids, cow, buffalo, cocoa solids, emulsifier, lecithin, soya, origin, all that, right? Now, but you do not find the word that says cocoa butter. If cocoa butter term is not there in the ingredients, then it is not a couverture chocolate. It is called as compound. There are a lot of brands. Vanlier is also nice, and anything else I can think of, 2M, and the other brands where even like chocolate chips are also compound, right? So now go check. If you want compound, I use compound also. Now these days because of the price hike, now we have three different. You have dark compound, milk compound, and then white compound. Same like the chocolate. So you have dark milk and white that we use predominantly. Compound has become less expensive these days, so we are just happy about using compound. So we are not going to hike a price so much and then call about, hey, chocolate price is hiked, and so you need to pay us so much to even get a chocolate cake. I felt like, probably that is just not the thing anymore. So I just started using compound. But the recipes that I try and use, the combination of how much dark to how much milk and how much cocoa powder should I increase, the sugar, and then the recipe and the techniques that I play around to have like the best flavor of the product that I sell. I ensure that I did the R&D there rather than having to use the products where the price is like very, very high. Okay. So I think the ingredients are done. We just take out. I love baking, then corn flour. The baking powder. So like I said, we've seen the brief of all the ingredients, the tools. In the third section, I'm going to show the measurements. Like I said, there have been a lot of misconceptions and a lot of people measure with errors, and then that results in wrong end products. So now we have the weighing scale, right? A simple weighing scale in Amazon just costs around like 500s and even less than that works. But then they get break down somewhere like within a year, and then probably you might have to just buy another one again, but that is a low investment. Okay. And like I said, I have the micro weighing scale, a small one. Why I use? Because there's a lot of times when I do like savory baking and then I need precision, because most of the baked recipes call for baking powder, baking soda, and like 1 teaspoon, half a teaspoon, and then I'll tell you how to measure that rightly. So sometimes when I'm doing like the savories where my peri peri sauce requires not in teaspoons, but like in between, like chili powder and cinnamon powder, and a lot of other places where I will need precision, where micro weighing scale comes in when you have to like measure for 0.2 grams, 0.23 grams. And there are times when we have to doing it with exact precision. So I use micro weighing scale. And then we have the baking measuring cups. So 1 cup equals to 240 ml. Most times people are like, what is your 1 cup? I want to know your 1 cup. Now, earlier times there used to be 1 cup, which was 200 ml. The times between the US measuring methods and then UK measuring methods, there used to be confusion. But these days, that 200 ml for 1 cup, the cup itself is not there anywhere here, right? It's just become like a museum piece. I don't even have the one that I used to be using. It used to be in red color long back. I think it's not with me anymore. So now these days, all the cups come like this. So we have to get adapted to what we have. So these are all 240 ml is 1 cup, and that is the cup I use. And I have given the recipes in grams and ml to just avoid the confusion. But then there's strike that happens with my students, and they're like, if I give anything in a cup, give me in grams. So I really wanted to come and actually show what it is to measure using cups, right? And like I said, I also have the measuring cups, measuring jars. Okay, so now what jars side? Now this has the ml that is written here. I don't know if I should be able to show. Okay, so the ml numbers are written here. Probably you can see it starts with 50 here, 100. Okay, 150, 200. So whenever you have a liquid ingredient, you need to be using this to do the measurement. So you know ml and the gram are different. It may sound like one complicated physics class, but then that is very, very important to know ml, milliliter and grams are different stuff when it comes to baking. But even otherwise, they are all completely different. And so jars are done. Now let us start measuring. When say your recipe is calling for, so this is the weighing scale. Top, okay. Now what do you see? A 0 here, right? Now when you keep a bowl, now in the bowl is where you need to do the measurement. Now when you put the bowl, it says 619. That is the weight of the bowl. Now if your recipe is calling for like say 100 grams of all-purpose flour, I'll just use one ingredient to show how it looks like. The weighing. Now, you don't do the math by trying, so 100 grams of all-purpose flour is what I want to add. Don't do the math trying to do addition, subtraction and all that. There is a button called tare, T-A-R-E. You press that and then ensure to make it 0 after placing the bowl. Now, if I put my hand also, the number will change. Now, whatever you do, bring it back to 0. When you take, obviously it will show in negative, which is the weight of the bowl, but you're tearing it and then removing it. Don't complicate all that. So now you can also, even before switching it on, you can place the bowl. Ensure after placing the bowl, you have to tear it. When you tear, it goes to 0. Okay, so now after the bowl, it is 0. And then you have the all-purpose flour try and loosen the flour, and that is why you need like a big mouthed container, and then you pick it up and then add, it says 80, 81, and then drop a little bit more, it is 95, little bit more, 102. Now because baking involves precision, when it says 102, try and remove a bit, and then it comes to 100. In case I removed a little bit more and it became 96 or 97, I'll have to make it 100. Now why I am doing this to show you is because baking involves precision, and you need to ensure you have the right number, what your recipe calls for in grams, and that is the quantity of the flour that you should have measured. I'm going to put this back. Now this applies to sugar, cocoa powder, all that you're going to measure in grams. You know, you need to tare the bowl that you're using by keeping it on the weighing scale and then measuring. Now, what you need to do, if you have to weigh it using the cup. So now 1 cup of all-purpose flour, any dry ingredient for that matter. So now I'm just going to pick this 1 cup. So it is so essential, very, very important when you're going to measure in cups. You need to go in all the way, dig the flour. And that is why, like I said, especially when you're measuring in cup, you need to dig it. Loosen up the flour is the first important step you need to do. Just keep digging, loosen up. Okay, so after loosening, what I will do, I'll just go top. I'll go pick the flour from the middle like that. What I will not do is, I shouldn't be going all the way till the walls, the side walls, and try, because it is easier like that. If you go and do this onto the side of the bowl, you will be packing it tightly. A lot more excess flour will come into the cup. So now this is something you need to avoid. Loosen up and do not go to the wall of the container that you have. That will pick a lot of excess. Instead, loosen up the flour. Try and pick the flour from the middle itself, and you have a heaped cup, say. And you have a heaped cup full of flour. Now once you have heaped cup, don't tap or anything. Use a knife and start from the sides and go all the way till here. Cut the flour. Cut the heap. Do it one more time or even thrice. So instead of keeping it straight, I am just holding it at an angle. So when no more excess flour goes out, and this is the measured 1 cup of the flour. Okay, so the entire cup will get empty. Now if you have a half a cup measurement, you will go do the same thing. Loosen up the flour, pick heaped flour from the middle. You have the heap, use a knife, cut the excess a few times, and then you know you've measured half a cup, and this also gets measured. Now this particular bowl has 1.5 cup of the flour. Now there has to be a little bit of math that probably you might have to do. So here it is written, if you can see, this is a half a cup. This one says 2/3 of a cup. So this one says 2/3. This one here, it says half a cup. Okay, and the last one says 1/4. Now if you probably need 3/4, whoever is watching, whoever said no audio, are you still there with me? Now if you're there and watching, you tell me, if a recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour, what would you do? Now you have an option for 1 cup, 2/3, 1/2, and 1/4. Now a recipe is calling for 3/4 cup. What will you do? Whoever is watching, you can just let me know. I'm going to wait for an answer. Hi Jessica, sorry to join me late, it's okay. So I have a question that says, Bliss Cakes, can I have your name also? So that's the right answer, which says half a cup plus quarter cup, a little bit of math. 3 by 4 is um, 1 by 2 and quarter. So what you will do for measuring a 3 by 4, loosen up, keep it, cut the excess, so it's like a lot of very complicated stuff. Cut it like a few times. Half cup is done. Because I need 3/4, half is done, I go to 1 by 4 next. Loosen up every single time. Heap and take, cut out the heap and then add it here. And then I have 3 by 4th cup. Kiara is also right, which is 3 times 1 by 3 is also 3 by 4. So little bit of math comes in picture. So yeah, loosen up all the time. Corn flour to sugar. Sugar you don't have to loosen up, but however it still works. Why you need to loosen up? Because we always take, we just go and keep it there, keep it here, keep it here. What really happens? It just tightly packs. So now when you don't loosen up, then when you're measuring, you have like the weight gets more. So always loosen up, keep it in the middle and then cut the heap off and then you have the right measurements. All the dry ingredients to be measured using cups has to be done in this method, or you will use the weighing scale if the recipe calls for weight in grams. Now what happens? Now you tell me, I'm going to ask a question. Just try and see if you guys are sleeping or if you are still interactive with me. What will you do if your recipe is asking for curd 60 ml? If a recipe is asking for 60 ml. Hi Priya, thanks for the right answer. Manjunath also has a Deepa, Tessie, a lot of you. Good. So you tell me, what will you do when a recipe is asking for curd 60 ml? Okay, that is also a right answer. Why will you choose for a curd for, okay. Now what will you do if a recipe is asking for curd 70 ml? Curd 70 ml. Now why so Manjunath has replied, he, right? For a 1 by 4 cup is 60 ml. How? Because little bit math, don't be intimidated by a lot of math. 1 cup I said is 240 ml, right? So quarter of it divided by 4, a quarter cup in ml will be 60 ml. Okay. Yeah, 1 by 4th cup is 60 ml. Now tell me, what will you do? 70 ml of curd is what you need for a recipe. What will you do? Kiara. Okay, I got you. I was waiting for that answer. A 70 ml of curd, if you weigh it in weighing scale, what really happens? I was waiting for somebody to give me that answer so I can teach a little bit of physics here. You will weigh the 70 ml of curd is that one basic mistake that anybody can do in baking, right? Why? Because you kind of like try and understand ml is something that liters, milliliter and then liter, right? Now you carry something in a bucket, you call it water in liters. You buy 1 liter of water bottle, right? You probably buy a Coke can that calls for like 330 ml. Why would people really have ml written when they can probably call it in grams? Now your weighing scale will deceive you, because then there is also an option there where it says grams, ounce, and then there are other 2 options as well, because ounce is basically ml, right? 30 ml is 1 ounce. So ounce comes in part of milliliters, or where liquids are measured in milliliters. Solids are measured in grams. Now liquid also can be measured in weight, right? You can take probably the water and put in weighing scale. Will the weighing scale tell you, hey, no, I am water, you are water, I am not going to weigh you? No. Weighing scale, even if I put my hand and then put the pressure, it will give me the number of how much weight I could press. You put water in it, it will give you a number. You put curd in it, it will give you a number. But will the curd be the same in ml and grams? It's a question that you need to ask for yourself. Now you're going to fill this entire quarter cup for 60 ml of curd. If you weigh the curd, take quarter cup of curd and then that you think is 60 ml. You put the same curd in the weighing scale to check if it comes to 60 grams. It will not, because not all the liquid ingredients have the same weight in number as the same ml in the number. 60 ml of curd does not equate to 60 grams of curd. So you will not use weighing scale when you have a liquid ingredient to measure which is given in ml in the recipe. This is the core mistake a lot of bakers who have just passed out of a lot of baking schools, a lot of studies they have done, they come back doing this mistake right in front of my eyes. And then I start doing the basic physics class where I try to make people understand in a way that you put 1 cup, take cotton candy, fill the cotton candy completely in this particular 1 cup. Let us take the weight of that. And you fill this entire cup with a rock. Probably let us just think about an edible stuff itself. Probably then you're just going to fill this entire thing with a pulse, or what else can you fill this with? Like cashew nuts. Completely fill this entire thing with cashew nuts. You're weighing 1 cup of cashew nut in the weighing scale. And you're weighing 1 cup of cotton candy or son papdi, something that you can think of. It is very, very light. Cotton candy you can visualize and then see if it is very, very light. 1 cup of cotton candy, will the weight of that be equal to 1 cup of cashew nut? No, right? So there is a visual and a glaring difference between what is the weight of 1 cup of something to 1 cup of another thing. 1 cup of sugar's weight is not equal to 1 cup of all-purpose flour. 1 cup of all-purpose flour's weight is not equal to 1 cup of corn flour. And this applies to every damn thing, every damn thing. 1 cup of the same thing is completely different than the other thing. Now, when the dry ingredient itself is like different ingredients weigh differently in the weighing scale for every cup, how can a liquid ingredient, especially in physics, something is written in ml, how can you go to the weighing scale to get the weight in grams? It's like a complete no. If you have been doing that mistake, get yourself out of it. Every time you go to the weighing scale to measure oil, to measure curd, anything else that you can think of that you predominantly use in liquid form, and you're going to probably use weighing scale and do the same number. If it is like 90 ml oil, and if you're going to pick your weighing scale and then see 90 as the number there and then pour oil in it, you are doing a mistake. You have to catch yourself picking your weighing scale to measure something that is in the liquid form and that the recipe is asking you to do in ml. Now, if a recipe has asked you 50 grams of oil, then is the right time to pick your weighing scale to measure 50 grams of oil. But not when a recipe called you for a 50 ml of oil and then you're going to pick your weighing scale and then do 50 grams. So ml and grams are different. 100 grams of 1 cup of all-purpose flour is not equal to 1 cup of sugar. That is also one thing you need to remember. Grams and grams of different ingredients are different numbers. ml and grams are different. So for ml, what will you do? You will take the measuring jar. And now that there are, you always wait, you weighted the liquid, right? So obviously that is the wrong thing to do. So never ever do that. Now when it comes to ml, you will go per ml. Now you have a jar like this where you can just go on and then measure. There are smaller jars as well, which are like, which are smaller, which has like probably a 5 ml, 10 ml, like the frozen syrup and all you drink, no? That will tell you 5 ml, 10 ml, 15 ml that we used to give for baby, right? So every time when there is an ml, you go per the measurements Again, you can use a jar like this. Otherwise, a quarter cup is 60 ml, right? And then, we have the measuring spoons. Now, for the measuring spoons, what really happens? 1 tablespoon is 15 ml, 1 5. 1 teaspoon is 5 ml. So, 3 times 1 teaspoon will become 1 tablespoon. So, this visually itself, probably if you are able to relate, 5 ml, 15 ml. Now, a half a teaspoon will become 2.5 ml. And a quarter teaspoon will become 1.25 ml. So, all these are mls. So, now if you want to do like a 70 ml of curd, you will go and pick your quarter cup, because this is 60 ml, and you will do twice of this because this is 5 ml. So, 60 ml from this curd is being measured, and then, so I will just measure it up and show. Say suppose we are going to do oil. Here, Tuni. So, for a 70 ml of oil, what you will do, you'll pick up the oil, and because this is a 1/4 cup, I'll just fill it till the rim. So, till the rim is all the 60 ml, right? And then this is 60, and ensure to empty the cup completely. And 1 teaspoon I am picking, 1 teaspoon is 5 ml. So, 60 is gone. This also I will just fill till the rim fully. This is 5. So, 65 is gone. I will completely empty the spoon, and then another 5. So, this will be 70 ml of oil. Now, can I use a jar like this? Now, when it calls for like 100 ml and you have a jar like that, you will put the jar on the bottom, you put it on your table, and then you can go down there, and then you can measure for you to get 100 ml. So, you need the jar to tell you with a marking, so you know exactly how much ml of the liquid you are measuring. So, this applies to milk, curd, any juices that is given in ml, anything that is given in ml, you will use a jar like this with the markings, or go per the cup, because the ml is it given there? I think it is given there in the cup, which says 1 cup is 240, and then you will do the math to figure out what the half cup is. If 1 cup is 240, what is half a cup? It's 120, and then quarter cup will become 60. And that little math is essential. Now, if you don't want to do the math, simply go ahead buying this. It is like a physics laboratory. A set of 4-5 smaller measuring jars are there. Just simply go by what is given there as reading. If you don't want to do this particular math, because math is not probably everybody's thing, and you simply just want to use this, go buy the measuring jars which has this measurements, and then the cups, and then the weighing scale, and then we have, I think, completed the third section. Any doubts about the measurements that you guys have? Print. Okay. Any doubts? How many of you got like really shocked and surprised that probably you've been measuring the liquid ingredients the wrong way? So, this is something that I really want to like propagate as much possible, that if you have been making that mistake, don't do that. All the liquids always measure like this, okay? Any other doubts on this? Pretty much basic stuff, so probably not too much of a doubt. And so while I'm yet to show the eggless cakes recipe, which I'm just going to show, clean this up, and then I'm just going to set it up for the recipe that I want to do. So it is like one delicious vanilla eggless pound cake recipe. That is also easy to make. Like I said, if you have watched this live completely and then go back and then try the recipe, which I'm going to demonstrate after this section. Now, while I'm going to clean up the table and then set the table up for the recipe, I just wanted to show the courses that I have. This is not probably cross marketing or something. This live, the purpose of this live itself is like, I want to guide the beginners coming in to show them the way of where they could start. Now I have like volumes of courses that I have in the past, that I've done in the past. The lives are very, very extensive. Like for one cupcake, I mean, if cupcake is a session, then that session itself goes for like 5.5 hours. And there are about 20 cupcakes probably I have taught in that particular session. And if it comes to brownies, 20 different brownies, and then that is like another 5-hour live. So the sessions are very, very vast. And if you are beginner, and probably if this particular live just interested you to step into baking, I wanted to guide you onto what courses that which I have that you can choose to start listing out, and then you can start buying the courses. They are live that got over, but the recording and the recipe PDF, I have it available for purchase. I just wanted to let you guys know, because not all the time can we like pull in everything into a free session. It is not about money, but it is about the time and effort and how we are just streamlining everything to put together into specific courses that comes in very, very handy for a lot of beginners to try, pitch in, learn, and then put into use. A lot of my students have made use of these short life courses, though they are like 5 hours long. I call it short life. There are times then there are courses which is 3 hours, 4 hours, and 5 hours as well. But they are very vast. Now I wanted to show, if you are in the different sections of, like, say, call yourself beginner, or call yourself in the intermediate stage, or call yourself in the advanced stage, I'm just having like an image that I just want to pop up now for you guys to see here on the screen, where these are the sessions and the beginners level. If you are there, you can just go choose these sessions that you can buy from the past, which is like the ice cream, that is a live that is upcoming. And then we have like a pizza class from the past, whole wheat bread, if you're interested in bread. Pizza is also very, very beginner friendly. If you're interested in that, just go ahead. And the pizza and whole wheat are bread dough based classes. Then you have rich fruit cake. That was like a blast of a course we have had in the December during the Christmas. And then the rest of the ones are like extremely beginner friendly. You start with brownies, cookies, cupcakes, cinnamon rolls, tea cakes, and then there is one buttercream class also. Okay, and then if you think you have crossed, now this is a suggestion from me to you guys. You want to try anything, just go ahead, probably start with brownies, start with cookies, and then do the cupcakes, and then do the tea cakes, and then probably do the pizzas, the whole wheat bread, and actually take up the ice cream class that is upcoming. And cinnamon roll is also a very, very delicious thing that you can make. That is also an yeasted bread dough recipe that whole demonstration was about. So this is the list of the beginner friendly sessions that I have. And if you are probably crossed and you think you know how to make brownies, how to make cookies and all that, then probably on the intermediate level, you can think of enrolling for Berliners, Korean buns, tiramisu, tres leches, and cheesecake. All of these are individual, independent courses that I have done in the past. The recording is available for purchase. And now if you're like completely advanced, you know how to make tiramisu, how to make tres leches and all that, then there is the advanced level, where modeling chocolate, because it is decorating based, cake decorating based. And then you have French macarons, and then we'll do entremet and opera. So this is something that I want you guys to just take a look at, and then you can check out on the Instagram link in bio to go get the sessions that you can purchase, and then you can have the access to the recorded sessions. And we have the other image that I want to show. If you're specific about savories and stuffs, there are 4 sessions only I have, but they are like amazing sessions. Korean buns, pizzas, whole wheat bread, and sandwiches. Okay. So, okay. So, you can. Okay, so I just wanted to have like a small hint of the classes that I had to show how vast the sessions have been, and I just wanted to take a look at that while I still just go clean the space, and then I'll get back to showing the eggless best ever pound cake recipe demonstration I'm going to do while you just watch up with probably like a coffee and see how the classes that I've done in the past have been taken place. Okay, we did have a music, okay, but it just kind of didn't play. Technically, somewhere we just had a lag. Okay, so it looked nice, no? But in fact, when we actually curated this particular video, that we wanted to just show it in this particular live, so I can guide whoever is watching to the kind of courses that I've done in the past. Then we asked as well, like, did we do so much? The entremets spread on the table and all looked so beautiful, so colorful, and then like 20 cupcakes in one particular session, and all the brownies that came in, and then cookies, and pizza. Did you see that? How delicious and soft paste, and the whole wheat bread. I'm not sure if you saw. Clip of that. But whole wheat bread is something that I would really, really suggest you guys to just go ahead and then take it up, because that particular technique, I'm not sure if it is available anywhere else. And then it is so soft. And using that particular dough, I make sandwich breads, and then I make even the Korean buns. Like I said, eventually trying to be a bit conscious about the ingredients that we use for the stuff that we make and give. We kind of probably need to switch over to whole wheat eventually, if not for the desserts, but at least for the main food. Like I said, the breads, the pizzas, the sandwiches, the Korean buns, and things like that. We could probably try and do the whole wheat. So whole wheat session is also something that I would suggest you to try. But if you are like, this particular session is more about beginner's guide, then probably go ahead and then choose the cookies, the tea cakes, the cupcakes, the brownies, and then try and do the cinnamon rolls. And then pizza is also a beginner friendly one. And like I said, the list was there, right? Can we have that list, that beginner thing list alone? So just for you to, ma'am, I purchased 18 classes of mine. Thank you so much, Vijay. Just that one clip alone, I just want to share for some time, so you guys know what are the sessions. Probably you can just try and see, choose if you want to just go by again. Okay, so this is the one. Ice cream, like I said, is upcoming. Pizza, whole wheat bread, rich fruit cake, brownies, cookies, cupcakes, cinnamon rolls, tea cakes, and almond buttercream. They are all the beginner friendly. And if you've done with the sessions from the beginners section, go to the intermediate, which is like the Berliners, Korean buns, tiramisu, tres leches cheesecake. And then I think we have 19 courses as of now. And then there is the morning chocolate, macarons, entremet, and opera as the advanced. They've enrolled for the ice cream course also. We'll purchase every other course also. Yes, so very nice. So we just switch over to the front. Now we have the demonstration of one yummy eggless cake. Now because it is beginner friendly, I am just keeping it without too much of tools. Now if you watched it and you feel inspired, just go and use simple tools like this to get baked. So we have the ingredients measured here. So in the YouTube link itself, in the description, the ingredients quantity in grams is given. So there is no amount of complication that you have to like do cutting and stuff like that. But the same thing works for teaspoons and tablespoons. You need to loosen up, pick it, use the knife and cut. For baking powder, baking soda and all that, it works like how I showed the flour, where you use a knife to cut. Even for baking powder and soda, you have to measure like that. So in this recipe, only the baking powder, baking soda and salt comes in teaspoons. All the other ones come in grams and then ml. So you will measure accordingly, because that we've learned that. Okay. So every recipe starts with sifting the, obviously, the preheating the oven. So in the start of the session, I told you how you preheat. So you let your knob all set like I showed you, and then you keep it running until you are ready. Now the second step will majorly be sift your dry ingredients and then keep ready. So now you have a bowl. You don't need to use a glass bowl. I use it because in the camera you will be able to see the sides. When you do, you can do it with plastic bowl or stainless steel bowl also works. So in the metal, see, the dry ingredient in this particular recipe is the all-purpose flour. That is measured and kept for me. And then we have baking powder, baking soda, and then the salt. And then I'm going to sieve all of it, lift it up, and then you will just tap it on your hand, and then everything goes down the metal sieve. And then you will have a little bit of speck of the baking soda. There will be lump. You will break it, and then you will ensure all of it is just gone down. Now once it is gone down, you also need to use a wire whisk and then give it a mix. So you make sure they are also lump free, that is one thing, and they are combined properly as well. You need to just mix all the dry ingredients together. So once this one is mixed, I'll set that one aside. Now anyway, start with the curd, right? Now before that, you need to have your pan ready. So these are part of your preps. Now I'm using a 6-inch pan, and we need to line the pan. Okay, so now this is the parchment paper. You can also use baking paper as well. It works. Now you will just put the pan upside down. Now this is a bit too big. So I'm just going to get I'm going to measure to this diameter and cut that so I don't have a lot of wastage. So this is how to line your cake pan. One easy method that I teach my students. You don't have to use all of it. Now this one is measured to this diameter, right? So what I will do, have you made your paper ship, simple origami that probably we've done as kids. So you will fold one fold like that, second fold okay, so now this is the center. First fold, second fold, here is the center, keep that center and then fold again. So the center of the paper is just still there. Center is still here, fold it. So make like a rocket, but the center is there. Now eyeball from the center here, center of the pan, and then go all the way till the end and then make a marking. Then press it. Now here where you pressed, you just go and then cut. Now when you open this, you'll have a circle that is cut, which will be the size of the inside of the pan. So you don't really have to go around and then have a paper and then use this pan and then do one circle, draw it with a pencil and then cut. So obviously this goes waste, but you can use that, you can see, to cover the sides. But I ideally try and use a different paper. Now we also want to butter this, right? Now for a vanilla cake, it is okay that the sides are not lined. But however, I ideally want to make that as a practice. So you always have the sides also lined up with parchment paper or butter paper. Then even when you're doing like chocolate cake, which is like really very moist, and then the sides just come out clean. So, but then when we do it in the kitchen, we know which ones will stick to the side and which ones will not. So we kind of have the sides, we just butter the sides of the pan and probably not do the lining with the butter paper. Okay, so now that's how you prepare the baking pan. I'll just, okay, I think this one tool probably I missed out, which is the pastry brush, is what we call it. It's a silicone brush or a silicone pastry brush. Now I'm just going to have the pastry brush, and that is some soft butter. Just microwaved it quickly. I'm just getting the butter. Top on. So butter is here. I'm just going to brush the pan with butter, and I'm going to put this circle paper that I just made. So you need to put the butter there so this paper properly sticks. Okay, so the bottom is lined, and then I will get the butter, and then I will brush the side. Brush the side also properly with butter. And then I will get the paper side. So only if the butter is brushed, this paper will stick properly. Now because I cut two papers, I'm just going to use and ensure the bottom is also completely covered. I just want here, if the paper is not stuck, just add a little bit more. And just for easy release, I want to brush some butter on top of the paper as well. So now this will ensure your cake will just properly come out without any hiccup. It's just not going to stick and all that. Okay. So now preparing a pan just got ready, and oven is preheating, and we have the dry ingredients kind of sifted. And so now I'm going to start with the recipe. Now this particular recipe asks for melted butter, but I just wanted to show how the butter is. And now this is soft. You can check the texture of the butter, how you need to use. But anyway, because I'm going to melt it, and even if the recipe calls for a butter that does not need a melting, you're going to look for it is firm, not too soft, but it just, you can press and then you can see the shape changes. But this particular recipe requires me to melt it. I'm going to melt the butter. Now when I have to start with, this is not going to use any beater like I said. Now we start with the recipe, which is to start with curd. I'm going to add the curd. Now here is when the silicone spatula that I said initially is going to come into use. Now because baking involves precision, whatever is measured. Now because I'm doing it in live, because I have like a proper demonstration, I'm measuring all of it in like separate bowls, and then I'm kind of doing like it is a TV show or something, right? But when you have to do it by myself at home, then probably I will measure the curd inside this. I will avoid using this particular cup. That is not necessary. Okay. So now I have the curd here. Now into the curd, I'm going to add sugar. Now this particular recipe uses curd, and then go back to checking what I said about baking powder and baking soda. Now curd is there, which is acidic, and this particular recipe uses baking soda as well, right? So that is what I was explaining. I'm going to use my hand and the wire whisk alone, and then I'm going to keep mixing this. A little bit of arm power, and you will do this until the sugar dissolves. And that is also why probably we need the granulated sugar to have fine grains, fine granules. So I keep mixing. So obviously when your hand hurts, you can switch your hands. So you can just expect a consistency like this. Okay, almost like a lassi. So you're not putting in mixie, we are just trying to use the wire whisk and then bring it together. Now I have the butter melted, which is here, and we're just going to pour this and then keep mixing. Now here again, I would prefer to use a silicone spatula and then ensure all that I had measured and melted goes inside, because all the weight is per precision. Don't miss out adding any of the ingredient. And now again use the wire whisk. You can see how I'm just using it. This could be a little too difficult on your shoulders, but holding it like this will make it easier for you to mix. And then as I'm mixing, I'm also turning this. I'm trying to create that planetary effect. So that this bowl also is turning, and then I'm using the right hand because I'm a right hander. You can just switch between your hands, moving this bowl and using my arm power. I'm mixing up. Now this will get the butter completely mixed up. So you can check the texture at the stage. The butter is also கொஞ்சம் close அவ்வளவுதானா. So this will be the texture for you when the butter is also added. Okay. And then I'm going to add vanilla extract. So all of this you can just measure right when you need from the bottle and then add it in. I am just having it because it will just cut down on the time for me to open a bottle, and then because we're just doing it in live where I am teaching. So vanilla is also mixed up. Now I have the dry that I sifted and then the milk. Back. So this is the bowl in which I have the curd, sugar, butter and vanilla. And then I have the dry here and then the milk here. So most of the times at the stage, every recipe will call for adding the flour in 3 parts, milk in 2 parts, alternating the both, starting and ending with the flour. That is what the sentence will say. So you need to eyeball and then add 1/3 of the flour and then mix it. Now here you just try and do not over mixing. Just when you see the flour is all mixed up and there is no flour in here at all, and then you'll do the milk. Half of the milk, eyeball, and then just mix it together. And you keep combining it, and when you know the milk is completely incorporated, you can see a stage like this. The first part of the flour and then first part of the milk is added. And then the second part of the flour will go. One last part we'll just retain, and this again we'll just mix it. Just the wire whisk is enough. Even a wooden spoon will also do. So you can see I am also turning this while I am also using the wire whisk with my right hand. So you just need to make it lump free, and that is how at this stage the batter is going to look. Okay, and then we have the last portion, which is all of it. Because milk we are going to divide it only by 2 portions. We have one more flour portion, the last one. So it will be like a proper homogeneous mixture which is smooth at the stage. Okay, and pretty flowy. So now I'll put the last part of the flour in. So you can see like a pretty smooth batter. I'm giving last one brisk whisk. Now the batter is ready. So I'm getting everything out of the wire whisk, and now I'm going to switch it over to the silicone spatula. Now, if you're a beginner seeing what a silicone spatula could do, you can see it just clears up, which cannot happen with a stainless steel spoon or a wooden spoon as well, right? Now here I have the prepared cake pan. I'm just going to add, pour the batter, beautiful. Now every time, now this is a 6-inch pan. You can also do it in a 7-inch pan, and the height will be less, which is still okay. But if you're going to do it like probably in a 5-inch pan, don't pour all of this batter, because you need to fill a cake pan half of the height of the cake pan. Little too much will have cracks, or it will bake for extra time, and that will dry out the cake. Now if you're having like 4-inch pan and a 5-inch pan, divide the batter between the two, filling each of the pans just half full. I'm just going to level this. Just scraping and putting it back on there. And then one last important step that we need to do is to tap the pan side. Okay, so I'm just going to tap it. Okay, now good amount of pressure. Okay, and then this I'm going to send it into the oven. I think this gets baked at 180. So if it is an eggless recipe, it gets baked at gets baked at 180 degrees. Okay, and an eggless cakes gets baked at 180 degrees. And an egg-based recipe, I suggest to bake it at 160 degrees. And this will take about 20, 25. In the oven that I use, it will take 20 to 25 minutes. Now, your oven could take anywhere between 30, 35 if you're going to use an OTG. But however, you're going to look for the top to become golden brown. That is one check. Or in between, you need to open the oven and put a toothpick into the center and then take it out to see if the toothpick has come out clean. And if it does, then your cake is baked. But if you put the toothpick and then if it just has some wet batter sticking to it, then you need to put it back into the oven for the next 5 minutes or 7 minutes, and then take it out, put a toothpick, check if you still have wet batter sticking into the toothpick, then put it back, continue to bake again at the same temperature, just keep increasing the knob for 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes, and then you will bake until you have the toothpick coming out clean. So this I'm just going to send it into the oven to get baked. But I also have the cake, the same cake that is baked. So this I can show it to you instead of having to wait for like 25 minutes. So we'll just check how the texture looks of the same cake that got baked. Okay, so there's no magic. It's the same exact recipe. Now, if you're going to bake, that is the same thing that you can expect. So that is the wire rack, and that's the cake. Okay, so now what you usually do, so now it was baked in the kitchen, so the side paper is not put, but I suggest you guys to go ahead and put the side paper. So once it comes out, you just run a knife on the sides. Okay, and then ideally what I would suggest to cling wrap when the cake is hot from the oven, which is like you put in the wire rack and keep it there for like 10 minutes, and then the pan is still warm and the cake is probably hot. is what you consider, and that is exactly the time. Do not in bold and then in uppercase. Do not let your cakes to cool down to complete room temperature. Do not ever let your cakes to cool down to complete room temperature. That is something you're doing, like you're just doing a lot of damage to your baked product. So all your hard work will just go for a toss if you're going to let your cake to cool down to complete room temperature, because as it cools to complete room temperature, the moisture from the cake keeps on evaporating and then that dries out your cake so much. So 10 minutes on wire rack like that. From the bottom, like I said, the air goes, starts cooling it from the bottom, and then the top is wet. And then when the pan is still warm, you will lift it, let the knife run around in between the cake and the pan, and then you let the cling wrap on side, let the cling wrap on, open it, because the cake will still be so soft because it is like quite hot. You will turn it upside down, onto the cling wrap directly. Okay, and then remove the parchment paper or butter paper that you put the bottom. Remove that out, and you're just going to wrap it. Okay, so cling wrap is also one thing that you need and that I probably didn't include in the list. And ensure there is no gap that gets locked between the cake and the cling wrap. You don't want any air pockets. So just completely get everything on the bottom. And then ensure the top is like properly sealed. I would suggest to go for a double layer cling wrap. Now, if it's a tea cake that probably you want to eat it up for your family, like right away while it is warm, you can just go cut it down into slices. But if you're going to bake it now and then probably eat it the next day or probably after a few hours, then you will cling wrap it to seal the moisture, and that is one step. If you don't do that, then you will have really dry cakes. Okay. So let's just check the texture of this cake to see how it looks. So when you do, you can also compare it to see if it looked like that. So now storage of this cake, if probably you're making it today and then if you feel like you wanted to use it after 3 days or so, now where will this cake go? Storage of this cake. So after this cling wrap, if it goes into the freezer, the storage, the life span of this cake will be like even for a month, it will stay very good in the freezer. So now you put it in the freezer today, and then after a week, freezer means obviously where the water turns into ice, it will become solid state. That is the freezer. That is where you will put this after you cling wrap. So the moisture is completely sealed in the cake. Now, when you have to use the cake, you can remove from the freezer, and previous dates, probably you can put it in the fridge. So it just becomes soft there. And then from there, you can take it out in the room temperature and keep for 4 hours to 8 hours. And then the cake will completely soften and then become very soft. And then it is ready to eat like as it was made that particular day. It is as good as fresh if you are going to store it in the way of keeping in the freezer. Now, if you're going to put it in the fridge is where probably you keep the water and then water is in the liquid form, but it is cold. That is refrigerator. When you put this in the refrigerator, the cake will keep drying out. Because imagine if you like probably have your curry, your sambar or something that is made and you put it in the fridge, and after 1 week, will the sambar be still sambar? It will dry out. It is not going to be same as it was the day it was made, right? But have you ever tried freezing your sambar to eat after a week? If you do, you will be surprised. Because if you make sambar or anything, sambar is just probably you can relate to, because cake is something you feel like it is like coming from an alien country, and sambar is something that we know. So now you make sambar today, you put it in an airtight container, leave it in the freezer. After 1 week, if you take and then you heat it up, you have like fresh sambar made. So if you haven't done that, then probably you can do to relate to what really happens in the freezer. When you cling wrap, it's completely airtight and there is no gap at all. You cannot just keep it without the cling wrap in an airtight container, put it in the freezer, it will dry. The surface is completely wrapped, and then this goes into the freezer even after 2 weeks, 3 weeks to about 1 month is completely tested. And when you take it out, you don't remove the cling wrap immediately. You can even take it out from the freezer and then leave it in the room temperature like this with the cling wrap on. The condensation will happen. You keep apple or any water bottle in the fridge or freezer, you take it out, you see a lot of water droplets forming on the outside of the water bottle or apple, right? The same thing will happen on top of the cling wrap as well. You'll have a lot of water droplets forming, and that is condensation. Leave out the physics part. Now, there will be a lot of water droplets forming, so don't remove the cling wrap. Let the water droplets form on top of the cling wrap. And once it is all done, wipe it off. So, you know that there is no more water droplets forming on top of the cling wrap. Once the condensation is all happened, once all the water droplet is all done, and then is when you can remove the cling wrap. Now, if you're going to eat the same day, you're going to make for your family, then you don't worry about all of this. But if you're going to store it, and you have to know that your cake is fresh only if you have followed whatever I just said, right? So now I'm just going to cut to show. I'm yet to read the comments, which I will just do once I cut to see how it looks. Come on, I'm just going to make one clean cut to the bottom. Okay, it looks super soft, nice and moist, and see, it is also eggless. Okay, I'm also going to just press it, and if I have to do it like that, you can see it is crumb, it is hard. If I had split between like two 5-inch pans, then it wouldn't be too browned on the outside. You can also check how it looks here. Make another slice. So now this is like just butter, curd and milk, and people are like, I don't want condensed milk. Then this is one to-go eggless recipe, and you can also replace the butter with oil in this recipe. This is a pretty forgiving recipe. You don't want butter in this, but then the flavor of butter definitely adds to the taste. So you can see super soft eggless vanilla pound cake is lovely and ready. So I'll just look out on the comments. This cake, can we use whipped cream eggless cake? Can we use hand beater for these steps? You can use hand beater, but then a lot of beating is not necessary. A lot of beating is not necessary. So much of the texture comparison you can just do and then get it done. This cake can be used with whipped cream eggless cake. You probably can, but I don't use this. I probably would eat this like a tea cake. But for layering, I really prefer some specific technically on the higher side recipes, because whipped cream, we kind of want to soak it with flavored sugar syrup or different flavors of milk. It comes with a lot of other flavors. So this is to be eaten like that. I probably would say it will be good with probably ganache or buttercream, but for whipped cream, I wouldn't suggest using this because, like I said, I use different techniques to sponges that I use for different fillings and frostings. If it is buttercream, that's a different recipe. If it is for whipped cream, then something else, and ganache, then there's something else. So I kind of mix and match. And because I'm very particular about the texture of the cake that I give with the different fillings and the frostings that I make. Why is the temperature different for egg and eggless? See, at 180 is the 180 degrees Celsius is the ideal temperature people put up for any recipe. Okay, so in 180, if you bake any cake, it just kind of rises too fast. Okay, it bakes faster. So what happens on the sides of the pan, which is a metal, there is too much heat, and as the cake rises, the sides get baked faster. Now, when the sides get baked faster, it does not rise on the sides, which is on the edge of the cake, because it is set in a solid form already because of the excessive heat that transfers from the pan into the batter and it sets. Now what happens, the center is still in the liquid form and that starts rising, and so you have cracks. And to avoid the cracks, you kind of want to have lesser heat, so you kind of let the sides also rise evenly together with the center. And when it slowly rises, you avoid having a lot of cracks that can just spurt out in the middle. Now that is the logic to bake the egg-based cake at 160 degrees. Now eggless cake, when you try and do that, because the heat is very much on the lower side, the moisture that is required to escape out of the eggless cakes does not happen with a lower temperature. So the moisture retention in the cake is more. So the cakes become fudgy. The eggless cakes become fudgy because of the low temperature. Because of the low temperature, the moisture doesn't just go out faster and it retains in the cake, making the eggless cake fudgy when baked at 160 degrees. Whereas the eggless cakes, because egg is the liquid ingredient there, rather than in an eggless, we don't have the egg. The egg based is giving the coagulation from the egg ingredient that is there. But whereas we are using curd in the eggless recipes, so the moisture content is more in the eggless recipe. The retention of the moisture becomes a lot, making it fudgy if baked at 160 degrees. If that really made sense. But if you really wanted to know, this is what it is. So eggless always bake at 180, letting the moisture as much, the right amount of moisture to go out in the right temperature is 180 for eggless. For egg-based, 160 is the right temperature. And can you please suggest a good brand for cling wrap? I think this one, we're getting in a baking supply store, the bigger one. I know the ones that you get in supermarkets are not so great, but probably you have to look for a packaging supply store, guys, who can give you the bigger cling wraps. Ma'am, need eggless sponge for whipped cream frosting class. I'm thinking of a layered cake class where I will probably want to come and teach it as one of the short life courses, probably after ice creams, where I can just come and teach different flavors to layer cakes and what sponge we can use for whipped cream or what sponge you can use for buttercream. So that is not like a 1 hour session or like that I can just finish it off in a very short span of time. That involves a larger time, a larger space. So probably I'm thinking of I could come up with a short life class that you can join also in the future. Is tea cake and sponge cake recipe same? Tea cake is something that you can eat as it is. Sponge means it's a cake which can eventually be toasted, which is cutting the sponge into half and then putting some filling, and then you can just frost that whole thing. Sponge means cake. Sponge recipe means cake recipe. Tea cake means something that probably you want to eat without adding any frosting as it is as a plain cake. If you are using essence and not extract, what will be the measurement? Should we put more? You don't need to put more. You just simply use the same essence quantity, what I had used and what I have given in the ingredient list that I had shared, right? My cake batter was not a bit thick and cake was a bit thick. And I used a hand beater. Please reply. Jay Shri. The question could have been a little bit more elaborate because I didn't even know, are you baking together with me? As I showed, did you do the same thing as I did? And only then I will know if I could just compare what I did with what you had done. So, do exactly like how I did. And then if the cake is batter is thick, fine, as long as you have your end result of the cake that comes out really very fluffy and tasty, it doesn't matter. Okay, it still works. Ma'am, can you give egg recipe also of vanilla pound cake? Can I come in another live and probably do it? Because, you know, think about actually doing 2 recipes. It was actually 3.5 hours on the session that I really wanted to see if I can finish it up in an hour, hour and a half or 2. So it's going to be 3.5 hours now. Session, I really don't know. I really wanted a lot of people to come and watch back again in the future, because I was talking about a lot of beginner baking guide, and then what do people think is like 3.5 hours for a beginner baking guide, and is the session going to be like really boring, or is it like too long for anybody to even, because you just want to finish knowing or learning something like in a reel, a 30-second reel, you want a recipe to be shared. But when you do that, sometimes it just works like a charm. A lot of people, yeah, look into the reel and then you're just able to make like a brownie or a cookie or a cake. But there could be a lot of places where you can miss out and a lot of places where you can make errors. And so I thought an elaborate session like this, forever, then I can just keep sharing it to a lot of my students who like keep coming back and asking for a beginner guide. And I thought like this session will just stay on the YouTube forever, and for a lot of people to come back and keep checking. So you know where you're making the mistake. And then this will just remain like a guide for a long, long time to go, right? Can't we swap cake with 2 curds? You could try, explore, right? You can just go ahead and then try that. But I haven't done that here, so I'm just not going to vouch for it, because unless I try, I can just give you my word, right? So thank you so much for actually making this first series of this beginner's guide so very successful. I really enjoyed, because this is something that it's been a while since I just came to any of my even offline courses. All my offline courses are baking foundation courses. This is one thing that I start with, and it's been a while since I just told this to anybody. So I feel like so nice today that I had to teach the basics again. So I'm thinking of the next following month to come back with something pretty simple, and I'll see what more on the basics that I'm yet to cover. Then probably even I think somebody asked about the oven thermometer. Probably I'll come back with how to calibrate your oven, because are you sure what temperature your oven is baking? Even if the knob is 180, the inside of the oven, is it 180? So there are a lot of other basic sessions that I can think of where I can come and help the beginners like you who really want to start up and you're just stuck and you have a lot of things that probably you need guidance with, not just the recipes and courses. However, this is also like a gateway for you that I'm letting you guys to come and explore baking, and you know where to go to my Instagram page, which is Fondbites, and you can click on the link in bio, which will give you all the list of courses that I've just been talking about, and any of it interests you. If you're a beginner, just go ahead and then see whatever course interests you, and everything is basically beginner friendly. I would have like probably taught with simple ingredients like this, and then I would have probably showed everything in as much detail as I've showed now. So you can just go on and then get your courses. You might have to look for the message from the official number of Fondbites. We will DM you to know your Facebook account, and then we will add you into the Facebook group, and inside the Facebook group, the live recording is uploaded, and then we have the recipe PDF also. So all of the courses you can just go and enroll, which is purchase a course now. And once you have the recording, watch the recording in full detail, write down the notes and understand and take it into your head, and then start making them, right from the cookies to brownies to cupcakes to tea cakes. Those are the basics. And obviously, if you're interested in tiramisu, tres leches, and berliners, opera, entremet, all the advanced stuffs. Like I said, the whole wheat bread and pizzas and sandwiches are very, 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 very yummy. Okay, so all the courses are like really nice. So this is like a gateway, and I just wanted to show how it is to start baking. But I really want to come back in another session for the next month. But I'm also going to meet a lot of people, because this Saturday we have like a 2-tier whipped cream sharp edges stacking of 2-tier live is happening this Saturday. If you're interested, you can enroll. Link for it is obviously there in the link in bio. And then we have the ice cream class that is following Saturday, the other Saturday. And then there is going to be one class or the other every Saturday that you can come and then make use of, see how much you can learn, and then put it back into your baking passion or career or however you want to call it. But I just want to be a part of your growing journey, and that is also going to make me really very happy. So thank you so much, and see you all in any of the other following courses. Thank you so much.